They say money can't buy happiness, but nobody warns you it can't shield you from humiliation either. Evelyn Cross had everything: a billion-dollar empire, magazine covers, respect. Then one leaked video destroyed it all. Now she's standing on a beach, barefoot in a designer dress, wondering if drowning would hurt less than breathing. But before she takes another step toward the water, a child's laughter stops her cold. Sometimes salvation doesn't arrive in a boardroom or a therapist's office. Sometimes it comes from a stranger building sandcastles with his daughter, someone who has no idea who you are or how badly you're broken. Want to see where this journey leads? Stay until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The Pacific Ocean didn't care that Evelyn Cross was worth $1.3 billion. It crashed against the rocks with the same indifferent rhythm it had maintained for millennia, completely unbothered by quarterly earnings or stock prices, or the fact that her face had been plastered across every tabloid in North America for the past 72 hours. The water didn't read Twitter. It didn't watch the viral video of her ex-fiancé, Marcus Chen, stumbling out of a hotel with his assistant, the same assistant Evelyn had personally hired 8 months ago because she'd seemed trustworthy and professional. The ocean just existed, relentless, uncomplicated, honest. Evelyn envied it. She stood at the edge of the shore, her bare feet sinking into cold sand, her $3,000 Valentino heels dangling from 2 fingers. The hem of her black silk dress, the same one she'd worn to last month's Forbes photo shoot, dragged through the wet sand, ruined. She didn't care. What was another ruined thing in a life suddenly full of them? The beach stretched empty in both directions, a rare pocket of undeveloped coastline about 90 miles north of San Francisco. She'd driven here on impulse, fleeing her Presidio Heights penthouse at 4 in the morning after another sleepless night of refreshing social media like some kind of digital masochist. Her PR team had sent 14 emails. Her mother had called 6 times. The board had scheduled an emergency meeting to discuss optics and leadership stability. Evelyn had ignored all of it. She'd just driven. North on Highway 1, windows down, radio off, pushing her Mercedes until the city disappeared behind her and the sky started turning gray with pre-dawn light. She'd pulled off at a scenic overlook, walked down a crumbling staircase carved into the cliff face, and ended up here, alone. Finally, mercifully alone. Except she wasn't, actually. About 200 yards down the beach, near a cluster of dark rocks, she could make out 2 figures. Even from this distance, she could tell one was small, a child, maybe 5 or 6 years old. The other was an adult, crouched down, engaged in some kind of activity she couldn't quite make out. Evelyn's first instinct was to turn around, climb back up to her car, and drive somewhere even more isolated. She'd come here to escape people, not stumble into someone's family beach day. But something stopped her. Maybe it was the sound of laughter, high and clear and completely unself-conscious, cutting through the steady rumble of waves. Maybe it was the way the adult figure moved, patient and unhurried, in a world that had felt nothing but frantic and hostile for days. Maybe it was just exhaustion, the bone-deep weariness of running with nowhere left to go. Whatever it was, Evelyn started walking toward them. The sand was harder near the waterline, easier to walk on. The rising sun painted everything in shades of amber and rose gold, the kind of light that photographers paid thousands for and never quite captured. Evelyn had been photographed in light like this before, for magazine spreads, for ad campaigns, always styled and positioned and told exactly how to turn her face. Right now, she probably looked like hell. Her hair, usually blown out to glossy perfection, hung in salt-stiffened waves. She'd stopped wearing makeup 2 days ago. There were shadows under her eyes dark enough to require industrial-strength concealer, and she didn't have any. She didn't care about that either. As she got closer, the scene came into focus. The child was a little girl with dark curls pulled into 2 lopsided ponytails, wearing pink leggings and a purple jacket covered in cartoon dinosaurs. She was crouched over an elaborate sandcastle, or rather, the beginnings of one. Towers and walls were taking shape, decorated with shells and bits of seaweed arranged with the kind of intense focus only children possess. The adult was a man, probably early 30s, wearing faded jeans and a gray hoodie. He was helping her build, but in that careful way parents do, contributing without taking over, letting the child's vision remain the primary one. Evelyn stopped about 20 feet away, suddenly uncertain. What was she doing? These were strangers. They didn't need some broken billionaire intruding on their morning. But the little girl looked up. Her eyes were huge and dark, and when she smiled, Evelyn saw she was missing her two front teeth. "Hi," the girl called out, waving with a sandy hand. "Do you like our castle?" The man glanced up, surprised. He had the kind of face that was hard to read at first. Strong features, a few days of stubble, eyes that seemed both tired and warm at the same time. He looked at Evelyn with the cautious politeness of someone who wasn't sure if they were about to be yelled at. "It's very nice," Evelyn heard herself say. Her voice came out rough, unused. "Do you want to help?" the girl asked, already turning back to her construction. "We're making it really big. Big enough for a princess and a dragon." "Emma," the man said quietly, "maybe the lady wants to walk by herself." "Do you?" Emma looked up at Evelyn again, head tilted. Evelyn opened her mouth to say yes, to make her polite exit, to continue her aimless wandering down the beach until she figured out what the hell she was supposed to do with the wreckage of her life. Instead, she said, "No." The man blinked. Emma grinned. "Okay." The girl patted the sand next to her. "You can sit here. What's your name?" Evelyn hesitated for just a second. She could lie, should lie. The last thing she needed was recognition, questions, sympathy. "Eve," she said, close enough to the truth, far enough from the headlines. "I'm Emma. This is my dad. His name is Daniel, but I call him Daddy." She said this with the absolute confidence of a child who believed these were the most important facts in the world. Daniel gave Evelyn a small, apologetic smile. "Sorry, she's friendly." "It's fine." Evelyn lowered herself onto the sand carefully, like someone who hadn't sat on a beach in years, which was true. She hadn't. There was always too much work, too many meetings, too many demands on her time. "Here." Emma thrust a small plastic shovel into Evelyn's hand. "You can make the walls taller, but be careful. They fall down sometimes." Don't they always? Evelyn thought. She started to dig, mechanically at first, piling sand where Emma directed. The child kept up a steady stream of commentary about the castle, about the shells she'd found, about how the dragon would be friendly, but the princess had to be brave anyway, because that's what princesses did. "Why does she have to be brave if the dragon's friendly?" Evelyn asked. Emma looked at her like the answer was obvious. "Because sometimes things look scary even when they're not. And you have to be brave to find out." Daniel caught Evelyn's eye over his daughter's head, his expression somewhere between amused and resigned. "She's very philosophical for a 6-year-old. "I'm 6 3/4, Emma corrected. "My apologies," Daniel said solemnly. They worked in silence for a while. The sun climbed higher, burning off the morning fog. Seagulls screamed overhead. Somewhere down the beach, a dog barked. Evelyn found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't in weeks. Months, maybe. There was something hypnotic about the repetitive motion. Dig, pile, smooth, repeat. No decisions to make, no emails to answer, no cameras to face. Just sand and water, and the simple, singular goal of making something stand upright. "You're sad," Emma announced. Evelyn's hands stilled. "What?" "You're sad. I can tell." The girl studied her with those enormous dark eyes, completely matter-of-fact. "You look like my dad looked after my mom left." "Emma," Daniel's voice held a warning. "It's okay," she said, unbothered. "People get sad sometimes. That's what you always tell me." Daniel looked at Evelyn, and there was something in his expression, embarrassment, yes, but also understanding, recognition. "Sorry," he said quietly. "She's observant." "It's okay." Evelyn was surprised to find she meant it. There was something almost refreshing about Emma's directness. No pity. No carefully worded sympathy. Just a simple observation delivered with the bluntness only children possessed. "Is someone being mean to you?" Emma asked. "Because being mean is not okay. You should tell them to stop." If only it were that simple. "Something like that," Evelyn said. "My mom was mean to my dad," Emma continued, shaping a tower with intense concentration. "She yelled a lot, and then she left. But Daddy says it's okay because now we get to do whatever we want on Saturdays, like build castles." Emma. Daniel's voice was firmer now. That's enough. The girl looked up at him, then back at Evelyn. Did I say something wrong? No, Evelyn said before Daniel could answer. You didn't. She looked at the man, really looked at him for the first time. He wasn't handsome in the polished, corporate way Marcus had been. His features were rougher, more lived in. There were lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled often or used to. His hands were working hands, calloused and strong, not the manicured hands of the executives Evelyn spent her days with. But there was something in the way he looked at his daughter, patient, present, completely focused, that made Evelyn's chest tighten with an emotion she couldn't name. How long ago? She asked quietly. Daniel didn't pretend not to understand. About 1.5 years. I'm sorry. He shrugged, a gesture that tried for casual and didn't quite make it. These things happen. Do you hate her? The question came out before Evelyn could stop it. Too personal, too raw. But she needed to know. Daniel considered this, really considered it, while Emma hummed and added shells to her tower. No, he said finally. I was angry for a while, hurt. But hate? He shook his head. Hate takes too much energy, and I've got better things to spend it on. He glanced at his daughter with a softness that made Evelyn want to look away. How do you do that? Her voice came out smaller than she intended. Just let it go? Who says I've let it go? Daniel met her eyes, and Evelyn saw that he understood exactly what she was really asking. You don't let things go, exactly. You just carry them differently. Make room for other things, too. Like sandcastles, Emma piped up. Like sandcastles, Daniel agreed. Evelyn looked down at her hands, covered in sand, nails that had been professionally done just last week, now broken and ragged. She'd spent the last decade of her life building an empire, acquiring companies, outmaneuvering competitors, making decisions that affected thousands of employees and millions of dollars. And here she was, on a beach, building something that the next high tide would wash away. Why do you do it? She asked. Build something you know won't last. Daniel smiled, a real smile this time. Maybe that's exactly why. No pressure to make it perfect. You just build it, enjoy it, and let it go when it's time. I don't know how to do that. Build sandcastles? Let things go. He studied her for a moment, and Evelyn had the uncomfortable feeling of being truly seen, not as a CEO or a billionaire or a scandal, but as a person, just a person sitting on a beach trying not to fall apart. You start small, he said, one thing at a time. Emma stood up suddenly, brushing sand off her leggings. I have to pee. Bathrooms are back by the parking lot, Daniel said, already rising. Come on. Can I go by myself? I'm big enough. Not by yourself, but I'll wait outside. He glanced at Evelyn. Will you be here when we get back? Would she? Evelyn looked at the half-built sandcastle, at the shells arranged just so, at the towers that were already starting to slump in the warming sun. Yes, she said. Emma beamed. Good. Don't touch the dragon tower. That's the most important part. They walked away, Emma skipping ahead, Daniel following at the patient pace of a parent who'd learned that rushing children rarely worked. Evelyn watched them go, then turned back to the castle. The most important part. She studied the structure Emma had designated as the Dragon Tower, slightly taller than the others, decorated with a piece of driftwood that could, with imagination, be a dragon's head. Evelyn reached out and carefully, so carefully, added more sand to its base, strengthening it, making it last just a little bit longer. Her phone buzzed in the pocket of her dress. She pulled it out, saw 17 new notifications, and turned it off without reading any of them. The sun was fully up now, warm on her shoulders. The beach was still mostly empty, just a few early morning joggers in the distance. Evelyn closed her eyes and listened to the waves. For the first time in 72 hours, the noise in her head went quiet. When Emma and Daniel returned, the girl ran ahead, ponytails bouncing. She stopped at the castle and clapped her hands together. You made it better. I was afraid I'd made it worse, Evelyn admitted. No way. It's perfect now. Emma dropped back down and immediately started on a new section. Now we need a moat. Moats are really important. Why's that? Evelyn asked, digging where the child pointed. To keep the bad guys out. Duh. Daniel settled back into his spot, picking up where he'd left off. Sorry again. About earlier. She doesn't really understand filters yet. It's okay, Evelyn said, and meant it. Actually, it's kind of nice. Everyone else has been walking on eggshells around me. Bad breakup? He asked, then immediately looked like he regretted it. Sorry, none of my business. Public breakup, Evelyn corrected. Which is worse. Ah. Understanding flickered across his face. People saw. Everyone saw. She dug harder into the sand. Video, photos, think pieces, hot takes, the works. That sucks. It was such a simple, insufficient response that Evelyn almost laughed. Yeah, it really does. My wife left me for her yoga instructor, Daniel offered. Cliché, right? Like something out of a bad movie. Did everyone you know see it happen? Small town. So basically, yes, he grimaced. Grocery store was fun for a few months. Everyone had opinions. Everyone wanted to share them. What did you do? Stopped going to that grocery store, started driving 20 minutes to the next town over. He shrugged. Sometimes the best solution is just avoiding the problem until it stops being interesting. Emma looked up. We moved too. Our new house is smaller, but I like it better. My room has a window seat. That sounds nice, Evelyn said. It is. I put all my stuffed animals there. Daddy made me pillows so they're comfortable. Evelyn glanced at Daniel. He had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. I'm a carpenter, he explained. So sewing pillows isn't that different from... Okay, it's completely different, but YouTube is very educational. This time Evelyn did laugh. It came out rusty, unpracticed, but real. What? Daniel asked, smiling. Nothing. It's just, I run a tech company, spent the last month in meetings about AI integration and data analytics, and you're telling me you learned to sew from YouTube. The internet is a beautiful thing, he said solemnly. They worked on the castle for another hour. Emma directed operations with the confidence of a tiny general, while Daniel and Evelyn followed orders. The moat got dug. More towers went up. A shell pathway was created, then redesigned twice when Emma decided it needed to be more fancy. Evelyn found herself talking, really talking, in a way she hadn't with anyone in years. Maybe it was because Daniel was a stranger, someone with no stake in her success or failure. Maybe it was because Emma's presence kept the conversation from getting too heavy, too maudlin. Or maybe it was just that she was so tired of holding everything in. I built my company from nothing, she heard herself say. Started in my apartment with a laptop and an idea. Worked 80-hour weeks, sacrificed everything. Relationships, friendships, sleep. She paused. I thought if I just worked hard enough, if I was successful enough, I'd be, I don't know, safe. Untouchable. And? Daniel asked quietly. And I was wrong. Evelyn smoothed the side of a tower, watching her handprint fade. Turns out you can have all the power in the world and still get hurt, still get humiliated, still lose things you thought were solid. Emma looked up. What did you lose? How to explain to a 6-year-old? Someone I thought loved me, Evelyn said finally. Oh. Emma nodded sagely. That's really sad. Yeah. But you know what? What? Daddy says that when something breaks, you can build something new. It might be different, but different can be good too. Evelyn looked at Daniel. He gave her a small, sad smile. She's quoting me, he admitted. I said that when we had to move, when we couldn't afford the old house anymore. Was it true? Evelyn asked. I'm still figuring that out, he said honestly. But so far, yeah. Different has been okay. Hard, but okay. The castle was nearly complete now. It sprawled across several feet of sand, ridiculously elaborate for something so temporary. Emma had stuck a piece of kelp on top of the highest tower like a flag. There, the girl announced. It's done. They sat back and looked at it. Already Evelyn could see where the walls were starting to crack as the sand dried. One tower leaned slightly to the left. The moat's edges were crumbling. It was imperfect and fragile and wouldn't survive the afternoon. It was beautiful. Do you feel better? Emma asked Evelyn suddenly. Did she? Evelyn checked in with herself, surprised to find that the answer was yes. Not healed, not fixed, but lighter somehow, like someone had cracked open a window in a room that had been sealed shut for too long. "A little," she admitted. "Good." Emma stood up, brushed sand off her hands. "Daddy, I'm hungry." Daniel checked his watch. "All right, we should probably head back anyway." He looked at Evelyn. "You okay?" She nodded. "I think so." Emma reached out and patted Evelyn's arm with sticky, sandy fingers. "Don't stay sad, okay? Sad is okay for a while, but not forever. That's what Daddy says." "I'll try," Evelyn promised. "Do you want to help us destroy it?" Emma asked, eyes bright. "Destroy it?" "Yeah, that's the best part. We always knock it down before we leave. That way we can build a new one next time." Evelyn looked at the castle they'd spent hours creating. Every instinct she had screamed against destroying something she'd worked on, against letting go of something she'd built. But maybe that was the point. "Okay," she said. Emma counted down from 3, and they all kicked the castle at once. Towers collapsed, walls caved in, the moat filled with fallen sand in seconds. It was just a disturbed patch of beach, indistinguishable from any other. Emma cheered. Daniel laughed, and Evelyn felt something inside her chest crack open, not breaking exactly, but expanding, making room. "Same time next Saturday?" Emma asked her father. "If the weather's good," he agreed. They gathered their things, a small backpack, the plastic shovel, and bucket. Emma took her father's hand, then surprised Evelyn by taking hers too. "Will you come back?" the girl asked. Evelyn looked at Daniel. He met her eyes, and something passed between them. Understanding, maybe. Recognition. Two people who'd been broken and were trying to figure out how to build something new. "Maybe," Evelyn said. Emma seemed satisfied with that. "Okay. Bye, Eve." They walked back toward the parking lot, Emma swinging between them for a few steps before racing ahead to climb on some rocks. Daniel paused. "For what it's worth," he said, "I don't know what you're going through. Not exactly. But I know what it's like when everything falls apart and you can't see a way forward." "How did you get through it?" Evelyn asked. He glanced at his daughter, who was narrating an elaborate story to herself about the rocks being a mountain fortress. "One day at a time, one sandcastle at a time, and I stopped expecting myself to be okay all the time. That helped." "I don't know how to be not okay," Evelyn admitted. "Everyone expects me to have answers, to be strong. Maybe start by being honest." Daniel's smile was gentle. "At least with yourself." Emma called for him, and he waved at Evelyn before jogging to catch up with his daughter. Evelyn watched them go, this single father and his philosophical child, disappearing into the morning crowd of beachgoers that was finally starting to arrive. She stood there for a long time looking at the space where the sandcastle had been. Then she walked back to her car. Her phone came back to life when she turned it on. A cascade of notifications, messages, missed calls. Her assistant had texted 47 times. The board meeting was in 3 hours. Her lawyer needed to talk. Her mother was demanding an update. Evelyn looked at it all, felt the familiar clench of anxiety in her chest, and took a deep breath. Then she opened her messages and typed, "I need a few days. I'll be in touch Monday." She sent it to everyone who mattered, her assistant, her lawyer, her COO, the board chair. Then she turned the phone off again. In her car, she pulled out a notepad she kept in the glove box for moments of inspiration, for deals that needed sketching out, for ideas that couldn't wait. She stared at the blank page for a long time. Then she wrote, "What do I actually want? Not what the board wanted, not what the investors expected, not what would make the best headline or salvage her reputation." What did Evelyn Cross, the person, actually want? She didn't have an answer yet. But for the first time in 72 hours, maybe longer, she was asking the right question. She started the car and pulled out of the parking lot, but instead of heading back to San Francisco, she turned north. There was a small town about 30 miles up the coast, the kind of place she'd normally drive through without stopping. She stopped. She found a motel. Nothing fancy, just clean sheets and a view of the ocean. She checked in under her middle name, paid cash, and carried her overnight bag to a room that smelled like salt air and cheap detergent. Then she sat on the bed, looked out at the water, and let herself cry. Not the careful, controlled crying she'd done in her penthouse, making sure her face didn't get too blotchy, that her eyes didn't swell too much. This was ugly crying, The kind that came from somewhere deep and dark, that didn't care how it looked or sounded. She cried for the relationship that had turned out to be a lie, for the trust she'd given and had thrown back in her face, for the humiliation of being betrayed in front of the entire world. But she also cried for the years she'd spent building walls around herself, convincing herself that success was the same as happiness. For the friends she'd lost touch with because there was always another meeting, another deal. For the version of herself she'd left behind in pursuit of something she'd thought mattered more. She cried until she was empty, until there was nothing left but exhaustion and the sound of waves outside her window. Then she lay down, pulled the rough motel blanket over herself, and slept dreamlessly for 14 hours. When she woke up, it was dark. The digital clock read 11:47 p.m. She was disoriented, unsure for a moment where she was or what day it was. Then it came back. The beach, the sandcastle, Emma's gap-toothed smile and Daniel's quiet understanding. The castle they'd built and destroyed. Evelyn got up, splashed water on her face, and looked at herself in the bathroom mirror. She looked terrible. Hair wild, face puffy. Mascara she'd forgotten she was wearing smudged into raccoon circles. She looked human. She pulled out her phone, still off, and turned it on. The notifications that flooded in were less frantic now. People had apparently gotten her message. There were still plenty of them, but they had that can-wait quality instead of the urgent panic of before. One message caught her eye, from her assistant Rachel. "Whatever you need, we've got your back. Simple. No demands, no judgment." Evelyn typed back, "Thank you. I'll be okay. Just need time." Then she opened her email and started a new message to the board. She wrote for an hour, deleting and rewriting, trying to find words that were honest without being weak, clear without being cold. Finally, she had something. "I'm taking a leave of absence, effective immediately. 2 weeks, maybe more. I need time to step back and reassess, not just the company's direction, but my own. I've spent 10 years building this company, and I'm proud of that work. But I've also lost sight of why I started in the first place. I need to find that again." Rebecca will serve as interim CEO. She's more than capable, and I trust her completely. I know this timing isn't ideal. I know it looks like I'm running from the scandal. Maybe I am. But I'm also running towards something. I'm just not sure what yet. I'll be back. But I need to figure out who I am when I come back. She read it 3 times, then hit send before she could second-guess herself. The relief was immediate and terrifying. She'd just walked away from her company, from everything she'd built, everything she'd sacrificed for. And she felt lighter. Evelyn walked outside down to the beach behind the motel. It was nearly midnight, the sand silver under a bright moon. The tide was coming in, erasing footprints, smoothing everything back to blankness. She thought about the sandcastle, how they'd worked so hard on it, knowing it wouldn't last, how Emma had counted down with pure joy before destroying it, how Daniel had said you build something new. The waves crashed, steady and eternal. The moon hung heavy and full. Evelyn stood at the edge of the water, feeling the cold foam wash over her bare feet. She didn't have answers yet, didn't know what came next, didn't know how to rebuild a life that had crumbled so spectacularly. But standing there, with nothing but ocean and sky and the simple truth of her own exhausted, broken, still-breathing self, she thought, maybe that was okay. Maybe you didn't need to know the ending to start the next chapter. Maybe you just needed to be willing to build something new, even if you weren't sure it would stand. Maybe brave enough to destroy what wasn't working, even if you'd spent years building it. Evelyn stayed there until the tide came all the way in, until the water soaked the hem of her dress, and her feet went numb with cold. Then she walked back to the motel, to the small room that wasn't hers, to the bed that wasn't comfortable, to the life that wasn't figured out yet. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, that felt like enough. The coffee at the motel's continental breakfast was terrible, but Evelyn drank it anyway. She sat alone at a plastic table near the window, watching guests shuffle in and out, families with cranky kids, a couple of business travelers checking their phones, an elderly man reading a newspaper like it was still 1995. Nobody looked at her twice. Nobody recognized her. It was the most anonymous she'd felt in years. Her phone sat face down on the table. She'd checked it once this morning and immediately regretted it. The board had responded to her email with what could only be described as controlled panic. Rebecca, her COO, had sent a single message. "I've got this. Take your time." Her mother had left a voicemail that Evelyn deleted without listening to, and there were 3 missed calls from a number she didn't recognize, probably reporters. She turned the phone face down again and focused on the coffee. "Is this seat taken?" Evelyn looked up. An older woman stood there, holding a plate with a sad-looking Danish and what appeared to be scrambled eggs from a warming tray. She had the kind of face that suggested she'd lived a full life and had opinions about most of it. "No, go ahead," Evelyn said. The woman sat, arranged her breakfast with the precision of someone who had a specific way of doing things, and took a bite of the Danish. Her face registered disappointment, but not surprise. "First time here?" she asked. "Yeah." "Thought so, you've got that look." The woman gestured vaguely at Evelyn with her fork. "Like you're not sure why you're here, but you're here anyway." Evelyn almost laughed. "That obvious?" "Honey, I've been coming to this motel for 15 years. I know the difference between tourists passing through and people hiding from something." She said it kindly, without judgment. "I'm Helen, by the way." "Eve." The lie came easier now. "Well, Eve, whatever you're hiding from, this is a good place for it. Town's small enough that people mind their business, big enough that nobody cares who you are." Helen took another bite of her Danish, grimaced. "Food's terrible, though. There's a diner about 3 blocks up if you want actual breakfast." "Thanks. You planning to stay long?" "I don't know yet," Evelyn admitted. Helen nodded like this made perfect sense. "Fair enough. Sometimes you gotta figure things out as you go." She stood, gathering her plate. "Diner's called Rosie's. Tell them Helen sent you. Won't get you a discount or anything, but Rosie likes knowing people are following her recommendations." She walked away before Evelyn could respond, leaving her alone with her terrible coffee and the strange, disorienting feeling of being seen without being recognized. 20 minutes later, Evelyn found herself walking toward Rosie's diner. The town was exactly as Helen had described, small but not tiny, with a main street that had clearly seen better days but was hanging on. A hardware store, a bookshop, a place that sold both ice cream and fishing supplies, buildings that needed paint, sidewalks that needed repair. The kind of place that existed in the gaps between tourist destinations and cities. The kind of place Evelyn would normally drive past without slowing down. Rosie's was a classic chrome diner that looked like it had been transplanted from the 1950s, and nobody had bothered updating it. A bell chimed when Evelyn pushed through the door. The smell of coffee and bacon and something sweet hit her immediately. It was maybe a quarter full. A couple of construction workers at the counter, a mom with 2 kids in a booth. And at a table near the back, she saw him, Daniel. He was alone, reading something on his phone while eating what looked like pancakes. He wore the same gray hoodie from yesterday, or maybe a different one exactly like it. His hair was still damp, probably from a shower. Evelyn's first instinct was to turn around and leave. Their encounter on the beach had been perfect in its randomness, its brevity. Seeing him again felt like tempting fate, like pushing something that should stay undefined. But he looked up before she could decide, and recognition crossed his face. Surprise, then something that might have been pleasure. "Eve," he said. "Hey." She walked over because not walking over would have been awkward. "Hi. I didn't know you... do you live here?" "About 10 minutes north. I come here most Sunday mornings. Emma's with her grandparents today, so..." He gestured at his empty table. "Want to sit?" She should say no, should maintain the boundary between yesterday's brief connection and whatever this might become, should protect the fragile temporary thing they'd shared on the beach. She sat. "I'll be right with you, hun," a waitress called from behind the counter. "Did Helen send you?" Daniel asked, smiling slightly. "How did you know?" "She sends everyone here. Considers it her civic duty." He pushed the syrup toward her side of the table, even though she hadn't ordered yet. "Fair warning. The pancakes are excellent, but they give you enough for 3 people." "Noted." They sat in slightly awkward silence. Evelyn picked up the laminated menu, studied it without really reading it. Daniel went back to his phone, then put it down, then picked it up again. "This is weird, right?" he said finally. "A little," Evelyn admitted. "We don't have to do this. If you wanted to eat alone..." "No." She put the menu down. "No, it's okay. I wasn't expecting to see you again." "Small town," he said with a shrug. "You staying at the motel?" "Yeah." He didn't ask why, didn't pry, Just nodded like people checked into motels for 2-week stays all the time. The waitress appeared, an older woman with bright red lipstick and a name tag that said Rosie. "What can I get you, sweetheart?" "Coffee and the pancakes, I guess." "Good choice. You want eggs with that?" "Sure." "Scrambled over easy sunny side?" Evelyn realized she had no idea how she liked her eggs. She'd eaten catered breakfast meetings for so long that someone else always decided. "Scrambled is fine." Rosie scribbled on her pad and disappeared. Daniel poured himself more coffee from the pot on the table. "So," he said, "how are you doing?" It was such a simple question, the kind people asked automatically, expecting an automatic answer. But the way Daniel said it, careful, genuine, suggested he actually wanted to know. "Better than yesterday," Evelyn said. "Worse than I'd like to be." "That's honest." "I'm trying that, being honest." She wrapped her hands around the coffee mug Rosie had left. "You said it might help." "It does, eventually. First it just feels uncomfortable." They both smiled at that. Her food arrived faster than seemed possible. The pancakes were, as promised, enormous. 3 of them, each the size of a dinner plate, stacked high and drowning in butter. "I told you," Daniel said. Evelyn cut into them, took a bite. They were perfect. Fluffy and rich and exactly what she hadn't known she needed. "Okay, these are worth the drive." "Right? Emma loves them. She always orders them and then eats about a quarter before declaring herself full." "Where are her grandparents?" The question came out before Evelyn could stop it. Too personal again. But Daniel didn't seem to mind. "About 40 minutes south, my parents. They take her one Sunday a month so I can have a day to myself." He said it matter-of-factly, but Evelyn heard something underneath. Not resentment exactly, but awareness. The weight of single parenthood. "What do you usually do on your days off?" "This." He gestured at the diner, his phone, the half-eaten pancakes. "Breakfast. Errands. Sometimes I work on personal projects. Mostly, I just try to remember what it's like to think in complete sentences without being interrupted." Evelyn laughed. "Is that hard? You have no idea. Yesterday, I tried to explain to Emma why we couldn't get a puppy right now, and I got maybe 3 words in before she started telling me about a dream she had about flying dolphins. By the time we finished talking about dolphins, I'd forgotten what my original point was." "Did you get the puppy?" "No, but only because I held firm on the dolphins being imaginary, and therefore not relevant to the puppy discussion. Parenting is all about choosing your battles." They ate in comfortable silence for a while. The diner filled up slowly, a steady trickle of locals who all seemed to know each other. Rosie worked the room like a conductor, remembering orders without writing them down, refilling coffee before cups emptied, dropping off checks with a wink or a joke. "So, what brings you to our thriving metropolis?" Daniel asked eventually. Besides Helen's recommendations, Evelyn had prepared an answer for this, something vague about needing a break, getting away from work stress. But sitting across from Daniel, who'd already seen her at her lowest, the prepared answer felt wrong. "I'm hiding," she said instead. "From?" "Everything. The news. My company. People who want to know if I'm okay when we both know I'm not." She pushed eggs around her plate. "I sent an email yesterday, taking a leave of absence. Just walked away from 10 years of work because I couldn't handle people looking at me." Daniel was quiet for a moment. "That doesn't sound like hiding. It sounds like surviving." "What's the difference? Hiding is running away from something. Surviving is running toward yourself." He paused. "At least, that's what my therapist says." "Well, said. I stopped going after a few months because it got expensive." "Did it help, the therapy?" "Some. Mostly she just made me realize I wasn't as okay as I was pretending to be. Which I guess is helpful, even if it's depressing." Evelyn found herself smiling. "You're really honest about all this." "Took a while. First year after Sarah left, I kept telling everyone I was fine. Great even. Thriving as a single dad. Then I had a minor breakdown in the cereal aisle at Safeway because they discontinued Emma's favorite brand, and I realized maybe I was full of shit." "What happened?" "I sat on the floor and cried for about 5 minutes while a stock boy pretended not to notice. Then I bought different cereal and went home and told Emma we were going to try being sad together instead of pretending everything was perfect." "How did she take it?" "She asked if we could still have pancakes sometimes. When I said yes, she said okay." Daniel smiled at the memory. Kids are weirdly resilient if you don't lie to them. Evelyn thought about that. I've been lying to everyone for weeks, maybe months, telling people my relationship was great when it wasn't, that I was happy when I was exhausted, that everything was under control when I was barely holding it together. Why? Because that's what people expected. Because showing weakness felt dangerous. She put down her fork. Because I built an entire identity around being the person who had all the answers. And now? Now, I don't even know what the questions are. Daniel poured more coffee into both their mugs without asking. Outside, the sun had burned off the morning fog, and the light coming through the window was sharp and clear. "Can I tell you something?" he said. "And you can tell me if I'm overstepping." "Okay. Yesterday, when we were building that castle, you looked more relaxed than you've probably looked in years. And I know we're strangers, and I don't know your life. But I watched you dig in the sand and talk to Emma and actually smile. Really smile, not that polite thing people do. And I thought, that's what she looks like when she's not performing." Evelyn's chest tightened. "I don't know how to be that person all the time. Nobody does. That's the thing everyone forgets. We're all performing most of the time. The trick is finding people you don't have to perform for." "Is that what Emma is for you?" "Yeah, and it's terrifying, honestly, because she sees everything. I can't hide from her, can't pretend I'm okay when I'm not. She calls me out every time." "Like she did with me," Evelyn said quietly. "Like she did with you." He smiled. "Sorry about that, by the way. She has no filter." "Don't apologize. She was right. I was sad. Still am, I guess. But at least now I'm admitting it." They finished eating. Rosie brought the check, which Daniel reached for automatically. Evelyn put her hand on it. "Let me," she said. "You don't have to—" "I know, but I want to." She pulled out her wallet, left cash with a generous tip. Rosie noticed and winked at her. Outside, the morning had turned genuinely warm, the kind of California winter day that made people from other states irrationally angry. Daniel checked his phone, then put it away. "I should probably get going," he said. "Got some work to finish before I pick up Emma." "On a Sunday?" "Freelance carpentry doesn't really respect weekends." He hesitated. "What are you doing today?" Evelyn had no idea. She hadn't planned past breakfast. "I don't know. Walk on the beach, maybe? Try not to check my phone every 5 minutes." "There's a trail," Daniel said, "about 2 miles north of here. Follows the coastline, goes through some nice woods. Good place to think. Or not think, depending on what you need." "Thanks." They stood there awkwardly, two people who'd somehow become friends without meaning to, unsure how to end the conversation. "Will you be at the beach next Saturday?" Daniel asked. "Emma asked about you this morning. Wanted to know if you were coming back." "I might be," Evelyn said carefully. "I don't really know what my plans are." "Fair enough." He smiled. "Well, if you're around, we'll be there. Same spot. Emma wants to build a dragon castle this time. Apparently last week's was just practice." "A dragon castle sounds ambitious. You have no idea she's been drawing diagrams." Evelyn laughed. They said goodbye, and Daniel headed toward a beat-up truck parked across the street. Evelyn watched him go, the stranger who felt less like a stranger every time they talked. Her phone buzzed. She ignored it. Instead, she walked. Found the trail Daniel had mentioned, followed it into the woods where pine trees blocked out the sun and the air smelled green and alive. The path was rough, roots and rocks, and places where the rain had washed grooves into the dirt. She had to watch her feet, pay attention, stay present. It was exactly what she needed. She walked for 2 hours, until her legs ached and her thoughts slowed down from their usual frantic spiral. When she emerged back at the trailhead, she felt wrung out but cleaner somehow, like she'd sweated out some of the poison. Back at the motel, she finally checked her phone properly, scrolled through the messages and emails with the detached interest of someone watching a TV show about someone else's life. The board was handling her absence with varying degrees of grace. Some were supportive, some were clearly furious. One had written a long email about fiduciary responsibility that made Evelyn want to throw her phone into the ocean. She archived it without responding. Rachel had sent updates on the day-to-day operations. Everything was running smoothly. The company, it turned out, didn't actually need Evelyn there every second. This should have been reassuring. Instead, it felt vaguely insulting. Her mother had called twice more. Evelyn still didn't listen to the voicemails. and there was one email that made her stop scrolling. From Marcus. She stared at his name for a long time before opening it. Evelyn, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I know I'm the last person who has any right to ask anything of you, but I need you to know that I never meant for things to happen the way they did. I never meant to hurt you. I know that doesn't make it better. I know sorry doesn't fix this, but I am sorry for what it's worth. I hope you're okay. Marcus. Evelyn read it 3 times, waiting to feel something, anger, sadness, anything. But all she felt was tired, so tired of caring about what Marcus thought or felt or wanted. She closed the email without responding. Then she opened a new message and typed, Rachel, I need you to handle something for me. 10 minutes later, she'd instructed Rachel to have their lawyers draft a clean break from Marcus's involvement in any cross-industries partnerships. He'd been consulting on their AI ethics board, a position Evelyn had given him because mixing business and personal had seemed romantic at the time. Now it just seemed stupid. Consider it done, Rachel wrote back. How are you holding up? Better, Evelyn typed. Getting there. Good. We miss you, but take all the time you need. Evelyn put her phone down and lay back on the bed. The ceiling had a water stain in the shape of something that might have been Florida. She stared at it until her eyes unfocused. The next few days fell into a rhythm that felt foreign at first, then comfortable. She'd wake up early, walk to Rosie's for breakfast, then spend the day hiking or reading or just sitting on the beach. She bought a paperback from the local bookstore, some thriller she'd seen recommended everywhere but never had time to read. She ate it up in 2 days. She avoided social media completely, stopped checking the news, let the world spin without her input for the first time in a decade, and every day she felt a little bit lighter. On Wednesday, she ran into Helen again at the motel. The older woman was loading her car with what looked like craft supplies. Still here, Helen observed. Good. Is it? Means you're figuring something out. People who leave after one day haven't figured anything out. They're just running. She tossed a bag into her trunk. You coming to community dinner Friday? What's that? Church basement, potluck? Everyone brings something. It's mostly an excuse for people to gossip, but the food's decent and it beats eating alone. Evelyn started to say no automatically, then stopped. What do I bring? Store-bought is fine. Nobody expects Martha Stewart. 6 o'clock, white church on Main Street. Can't miss it. Helen drove off before Evelyn could ask any follow-up questions. Friday arrived faster than expected. Evelyn found herself standing in front of the small grocery store on Main Street, trying to decide what to bring to a potluck. She settled on a veggie tray and some cookies that claimed to be homemade but were obviously factory-produced. Good enough. The church basement was exactly what she'd imagined. Fluorescent lights, folding tables, a slight smell of must and coffee. About 30 people milled around, talking in clusters, setting out food on a long table against the wall. Evelyn felt deeply, powerfully out of place. You made it! Helen appeared at her elbow. Come on, I'll introduce you around. The next hour was a blur of names and faces. Helen's friends were mostly women around her age, plus a few younger families. They asked polite questions. Where was she from? What brought her to town? How long was she staying? Evelyn gave vague answers and nobody pushed. Then she saw Daniel. He was across the room with Emma, who was showing something to another little girl. He looked up, caught her eye, and smiled, excused himself and walked over. Didn't know you'd be here, he said. Helen invited me. Well, told me to come. Is there a difference? Not with Helen. He gestured at Emma. She's going to lose her mind when she sees you. Right on cue, Emma spotted her. Eve! The girl ran over, nearly knocking into a table. You're still here. Daddy said you might be gone. Still here, Evelyn confirmed. Are you coming to the beach tomorrow? We're building the dragon castle, remember? Evelyn glanced at Daniel, who gave a small shrug like, your call. Yeah, she heard herself say. I'll be there. Emma threw her arms around Evelyn's waist in an unexpected hug, then ran back to her friend. Evelyn stood there, slightly stunned. She's been talking about you all week, Daniel said quietly. About the nice lady from the beach who was sad but got a little better. That's what she said? More or less. Lot more details about shells and towers, but yeah. They got food and sat together at one of the long tables. Emma bounced between them and her friends, bringing updates about games and snacks, and whose dad had promised to push them on the swings later. Daniel ate with the patient efficiency of someone who knew he might be interrupted at any moment. An older man stopped by their table. "Daniel, you still available to look at my deck next week?" "Yeah, Mr. Patterson, Tuesday work?" "Perfect. Bring Emma if you want. Martha made cookies." After he left, Evelyn said, "You do a lot of work around here." "Most of my clients are local. Word of mouth." He shrugged. "Doesn't pay great, but it's steady, and people are flexible when I need to work around Emma's schedule." "Do you like it, the carpentry?" "Yeah, actually, I do." He seemed surprised by the question. "I worked in an office for a while, marketing firm in Sacramento. Hated every minute of it. When Sarah and I moved up here, I started doing carpentry on the side, just to have something that felt real. Something I could build with my hands and actually see the results." "And then she left," Evelyn said quietly. "And then she left. And I couldn't afford the house on one income, especially not on what the office paid. So I quit, went full-time with the carpentry, moved to a smaller place." He took a bite of something that might have been casserole. "Best decision I ever made, honestly, even though it was basically forced." "You don't miss the stability of the office job?" "No, that wasn't stability. That was just prison with health insurance." He smiled. "This is better. Harder, but better." Evelyn thought about her own company, the corner office with the view, the assistant who managed her schedule, the board meetings and investor calls and endless emails. "I don't know if I like my job," she said suddenly. "I used to, when it was just me and an idea and a laptop. But now it's thousands of employees and shareholder expectations, and I spend all my time managing other people's crises instead of actually building anything. So change it. It's not that simple." "Why not?" "Because," Evelyn trailed off. Why wasn't it that simple? "Because people depend on me. Because I have responsibilities. And you'll have those no matter what. But you don't have to do it the way you've been doing it." Daniel set down his fork. "Look, I don't know anything about running a tech company, but I know what it's like to be stuck in something that's slowly killing you because you think you don't have a choice. And I'm telling you, you have a choice." Emma ran back over. "Daddy, can I have another cookie?" "Did you eat your dinner?" "Most of it." "Most of it isn't all of it." Emma sighed dramatically and returned to her plate. "She's going to finish exactly half and declare herself full," Daniel predicted. He was right. 5 minutes later, Emma pushed her plate away. "I'm full." "Shocking," Daniel said. "Okay, one cookie. And then we're going home for bath time. Can Eve come to the beach tomorrow?" Emma asked through a mouthful of cookie. "We already talked about this." She said yes. "But I want to make sure." Evelyn smiled at her. "I'll be there. Same time as last week?" "Earlier," Emma said decisively. "We need more time for the Dragon Castle." 9 o'clock? Daniel suggested, looking at Evelyn. 9 works. They said goodbye to Helen and various other people whose names Evelyn had already forgotten. Outside, the evening had turned cold, the kind of coastal chill that arrived fast once the sun started setting. Daniel walked them to their cars. Emma ran ahead, spinning in circles and singing something. "Thanks for coming tonight," he said. "I know it's probably not your usual scene." "My usual scene is conference rooms and hotel ballrooms. This was better." "Yeah?" "Yeah." She meant it. "See you tomorrow?" "See you tomorrow." Evelyn drove back to the motel, parked, but didn't get out immediately. She sat in the car, watching the last light fade from the sky, thinking about choices. About how she'd spent 10 years building something that was supposed to make her happy, make her matter, make her safe. About how none of it had worked. About dragon castles and terrible coffee, and the way Emma hugged without asking permission first. She pulled out her phone and opened her notes app. Started typing. "Things I actually want. To sleep past 6 a.m. without feeling guilty. To build something without needing it to be perfect. To have conversations that aren't about metrics or growth or quarterly projections. To feel like myself instead of the person everyone expects me to be. To stop being afraid of failing, to matter in a way that's real, not just impressive." She stared at the list for a long time, then added one more. To figure out who I am when nobody's watching. Tomorrow was Saturday. Tomorrow she'd build sandcastles with a 6-year-old and her single father. Tomorrow she'd let herself be Eve instead of Evelyn Cross, billionaire CEO, with all the answers. Tomorrow she'd take one more step toward whatever came next. Tonight, she went inside, took a hot shower, and slept without setting an alarm for the first time in 10 years. If you or someone you know is having a difficult time, free support is available. Find resources. Evelyn woke up at 9:15 and panicked. She'd actually overslept, for the first time since college, and she was supposed to meet Daniel and Emma at 9. She threw on clothes, jeans, and a sweater she'd bought at the local store because all she'd packed were business casual outfits that made no sense on a beach, and ran out to her car without brushing her teeth. The drive to the beach took 12 minutes. She parked haphazardly and jogged down the wooden stairs to the sand, already composing apologies in her head. But when she reached their usual spot, Daniel just looked up and smiled. "We were starting to think you'd bailed," he said. "I'm so sorry. I overslept and—" "Eve!" Emma abandoned the bucket she'd been filling and ran over. "You came! Look, I brought special tools today." She held up what appeared to be a collection of kitchen utensils, a spatula, a melon baller, something that might have been a garlic press. "Did you raid your kitchen?" Evelyn asked. "Daddy said I could bring whatever I wanted as long as I washed them after." Emma grabbed Evelyn's hand and pulled her toward the construction site. "Come on, we have to start the foundation. That's the most important part." Daniel was already digging, carving out a large circular area in the sand. He'd taken off his hoodie and wore just a t-shirt, his forearms tanned and muscular from years of physical work. He looked up at Evelyn, and she realized she was staring. "Sleep okay?" he asked. "Better than I have in months, actually, which is why I overslept. First time? First time in about a decade." He whistled low. "That's a long time to run on fumes." Emma thrust the spatula at Evelyn. "Here, you're in charge of smoothing the walls. Make them really flat so they don't crack." For the next hour, they built. Emma directed with the confidence of a general leading troops into battle, while Daniel and Evelyn followed orders. The Dragon Castle was significantly more complex than last week's effort. It had multiple towers, a courtyard, and what Emma insisted was a secret escape tunnel that looked suspiciously like a collapsed wall. "No, no, no," Emma said when Evelyn tried to fix it. "It's supposed to look broken. That's how you know it's secret." "Of course," Evelyn said seriously. "I should have known." Daniel caught her eye and grinned. The morning was warmer than last week, the sun bright and insistent. Evelyn had forgotten sunscreen and could already feel her nose starting to burn. She didn't care. There was something deeply satisfying about working with her hands, creating something tangible, watching it take shape through collective effort. "My mom used to build with me," Emma said suddenly. She was using the melon baller to create decorative circles in one of the towers. Before she left, Daniel's hand stilled for a moment, then resumed digging. "Did she?" Evelyn asked carefully. "Yeah, she was really good at it. Better than Daddy." Emma said this without malice, just stating facts. "She made a castle once that had a real working drawbridge, with string and everything." "That sounds amazing." "It was." Emma paused, studying her handiwork. "But she got bored of me. That's why she left." "Emma." Daniel's voice was quiet but firm. "That's not true." "It is. I heard her tell you on the phone. She said she wasn't ready to be a mom anymore." Evelyn's chest tightened. She looked at Daniel, saw the pain flash across his face before he controlled it. "That's not the same as being bored of you," he said. "Your mom, she had problems that had nothing to do with you. Adult problems." "Like what?" "Like figuring out what she wanted from life. And sometimes adults make bad choices when they're confused." Emma considered this while adding more melon baller circles. "Do you still love her?" The question hung in the air. Evelyn felt like she should leave, give them privacy, but Emma was looking at her too, including her in this conversation that should have been private. "I love who she was," Daniel said finally, "the person I thought she was. But people change, and sometimes love isn't enough to make someone stay." "That's sad," Emma announced. "Yeah, it is. But we're okay anyway, right?" Daniel reached over and ruffled her hair, getting sand in it. "Yeah, monster, we're okay anyway." Emma seemed satisfied with this. She went back to her construction, humming something off-key. Evelyn found herself blinking back tears. Not sad tears exactly, just overwhelmed by the rawness of it all. The casual way this child processed abandonment, the way Daniel navigated impossible questions with honesty instead of platitudes. "You okay?" Daniel asked quietly. She nodded, not trusting her voice. They worked in silence for a while. The castle grew taller, more elaborate. Emma insisted on adding a moat filled with shark water, which was just regular ocean water with some seaweed thrown in. "Tell me about your mom," Emma said to Evelyn suddenly. "Emma," Daniel warned. "What? I'm just asking." Evelyn smiled despite herself. "It's okay." She sat back on her heels thinking. "My mom is complicated. She loves me, I think, but she loves the idea of who she wants me to be more than who I actually am." "What idea?" "Someone successful, important, someone she can tell her friends about at parties." Emma frowned. "That's dumb." "Emma," Daniel said again. "Well, it is. You're supposed to love people for real, not for ideas." "You're absolutely right," Evelyn agreed. "But adults forget that sometimes." "Did your mom build castles with you?" Evelyn tried to remember. Her childhood felt distant, like someone else's life. "No, we didn't really do things like that." "What did you do?" "Piano lessons, tutors, summer camps that looked good on college applications." She heard the bitterness in her own voice and tried to soften it. "She wanted me to be successful." "Are you?" The question was so direct, so innocent. Was she successful? By every measurable metric, yes. She had money and power and respect. She'd built something from nothing. But sitting here on the beach, covered in sand, hiding from her own life, did any of that count as success? "I don't know anymore," she said honestly. Emma patted her arm with a sandy hand. "That's okay. Daddy says it's okay not to know things sometimes." "Your daddy is very wise." "I know," Emma said with complete confidence. Daniel looked like he was trying not to laugh. They finished the castle around noon. It was genuinely impressive, towers and walls, and Emma's secret tunnel, and a courtyard decorated with shells arranged in careful patterns. The moat encircled the whole thing, filled with shark water that kept seeping away into the sand. "There," Emma declared. "Perfect." "It's pretty great," Daniel agreed. Evelyn pulled out her phone to take a picture, then stopped. This moment didn't need to be captured or shared or posted. It could just exist, temporary and real. She put her phone away. "Hungry?" Daniel asked. "There's a taco truck about a mile down the beach. Best fish tacos you'll ever have." "I'm starving," Emma said. "Can I have two?" "You can have one, and we'll see if you finish it." "That's not fair." "Life's not fair, monster. Come on." They walked along the water's edge, Emma running ahead to examine interesting shells or chase seagulls. The beach was more crowded now, families setting up umbrellas, kids shrieking in the waves. "She asks a lot of questions," Daniel said apologetically. "I don't mind. She's honest. It's refreshing." That's a diplomatic way of saying she has no filter. "Maybe the world needs more people without filters." He glanced at her. "You really think that? In your world, I mean, the business world." Evelyn thought about boardrooms full of carefully worded statements, emails crafted to say something without saying anything, conversations that danced around truth like it might explode. "Yeah, I really think that." The taco truck was exactly as advertised, a battered vehicle with faded paint and a line of people waiting. The smell of grilled fish and cilantro and lime made Evelyn's stomach growl. They ordered and found a spot on the low wall overlooking the beach. Emma swung her legs, getting sand on everyone, completely oblivious. "So?" Daniel said carefully. "How long are you planning to stay? In town, I mean." "I don't know. I told my company 2 weeks, but..." Evelyn trailed off. But what? What was she doing here, really? "I guess I'm figuring it out as I go." "And after, when you go back? When?" "I don't know that either." She took a bite of her taco, which was indeed the best fish taco she'd ever had. "I'm trying not to think too far ahead." "That's probably smart." Emma finished about half her taco and declared herself full. Daniel wrapped up the rest for later without comment. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the ocean. "Can I ask you something?" Evelyn said. "And you can tell me if it's too personal." "Shoot. Why do you still smile? After everything that happened with your wife, with Emma's mom, you could be angry, bitter, but you're not." Daniel was quiet for a long moment. He stared out at the water, and Evelyn wondered if she'd pushed too far. You want the honest answer or the one that makes me sound like I have my shit together? Honest. Some days I'm angry. Some days I'm so bitter I can barely function. I look at other families, couples with their kids, all together, and I want to scream at how unfair it is. He paused. But then I look at Emma, and she's watching me, learning how to handle hard things by watching how I handle them. And I realized I had a choice. What choice? I could show her that when life breaks you, you stay broken. Or I could show her that when life breaks you, you find a way to keep going anyway. He looked at Evelyn directly. I smile for her, because she needs to know that being hurt doesn't mean you have to stay hurt. Evelyn felt something crack open inside her chest. That must be exhausting. It is, but it's also kind of liberating because I can't afford to wallow, can't afford to give up. I have someone depending on me to figure it out. He smiled slightly. You asked Emma yesterday if she thought I hated her mom. Want to know the real answer? Yes, I don't hate her. But I'm angry that she gave up so easily, that she looked at our life, at Emma, and decided it wasn't enough, that she chose herself over being a parent. He took a breath. But I also get it, because there are days when I want to choose myself too, when I want to run away from the responsibility and the exhaustion and just be a person instead of a father. But you don't. No, because that's what parents do. We stay. Emma ran back over holding a piece of sea glass. Look, it's blue. Daniel examined it seriously. That's a good one. Can I keep it? Sure. Add it to your collection. She beamed and ran off again. I never wanted kids, Evelyn said quietly. Everyone always assumed I would, eventually, when I had time, when I'd built my company, but I never felt that pull. Nothing wrong with that. My ex did. Want kids. It was one of the things we fought about. She laughed bitterly. Guess that's not an issue anymore. The guy who cheated? Yeah. He sounds like an idiot. He was very successful, actually. Stanford MBA, ran a nonprofit that got great press. Still an idiot. Daniel said it with such conviction that Evelyn smiled. Anyone who had you and threw it away is an idiot, objectively. You don't even know me. I know you show up. I know you sat in the sand with a kid you didn't know and helped build a castle you knew wouldn't last. I know you're here instead of in some fancy hotel because you're actually trying to figure your shit out instead of just performing recovery. He met her eyes. That's enough to know you're worth keeping. Evelyn felt heat rising to her face that had nothing to do with the sun. Thank you. Just the truth. They finished their tacos and walked back to where they'd left the dragon castle. The tide was coming in, waves creeping closer. Emma ran ahead, then stopped and shrieked, "It's melting!" The moat had filled with seawater, and the walls were beginning to slump. One tower had already collapsed completely. That's what happens, Daniel said gently. The ocean takes it back. But we worked so hard. We did, and it was awesome while it lasted. Emma looked at the castle, then at the encroaching waves. Her face scrunched up like she might cry. Then, with the abrupt emotional shift only children could manage, she shrugged. Can we knock it down? I thought you were sad about it melting. I was, but now I'm not. Can we? Daniel looked at Evelyn. What do you think? Evelyn studied the castle. They'd spent hours on it. It was beautiful in its way, temporary but real. Yeah, she said, let's knock it down. Emma counted down from 5 this time, dragging it out dramatically. When she got to 1, they all stomped through the castle, kicking down towers, crushing walls, filling in the moat. Emma laughed the whole time, pure and unself-conscious. Daniel joined in, and then Evelyn found herself laughing too, really laughing, the kind that came from somewhere deep and made her stomach hurt. When it was done, when the castle was just a vague mound of disturbed sand, they stood there catching their breath. Same time next week? Emma asked. Evelyn hesitated. Next week felt far away, uncertain. She still didn't know if she'd be here. Maybe, she said. Emma seemed to accept this. Okay, but if you're here, we're building a mermaid palace with underwater rooms. How are we going to build underwater rooms? I don't know yet. That's why we need a week to plan. Daniel scooped her up despite her protests that she was too big to be carried. Come on, monster. Time to go. Can Eve come to dinner? Both Daniel and Evelyn froze. Emma looked between them, oblivious to the sudden tension. I'm sure Eve has plans, Daniel said carefully. Do you? Emma asked Evelyn directly. Did she? She had no plans. She'd been planning to go back to the motel, order takeout, maybe watch whatever was on the TV that didn't require cable. I don't want to impose, she said. It's not imposing if we're inviting you, Emma pointed out with 6-year-old logic. Daniel met Evelyn's eyes. You're welcome to come. Fair warning, I'm not a great cook. We're probably having spaghetti and jar sauce. I like spaghetti, Evelyn heard herself say. Then it's settled, Emma declared. They drove in separate cars to Daniel's house. It was about 15 minutes inland, in a neighborhood that had seen better days but was trying. Small houses with yards that needed mowing, chain-link fences, kids' bikes on front lawns. Daniel's house was the smallest on the block, a one-story with faded blue paint and a porch that sagged slightly. But the yard was neat, and there were flowers planted by the mailbox, cheerful yellow things that looked recently watered. It's not much, Daniel said as they walked up. But it's ours. Inside was clean but cluttered in the way homes with children always were. Toys organized in bins, drawings magnets to the fridge, a bookshelf overflowing with picture books and what looked like carpentry manuals. Emma kicked off her shoes and immediately ran to her room. Daniel headed to the kitchen. Make yourself comfortable, he called. This'll take me about 20 minutes. Evelyn sat on the couch, feeling awkward and out of place. The cushions were worn but comfortable. There was a coffee table covered in crayons and coloring books. On the mantel, a few framed photos, Emma as a baby, Emma missing her front teeth, Emma and Daniel at what looked like a pumpkin patch. No photos of the ex-wife. She got up and wandered to the kitchen doorway. Daniel was filling a pot with water, moving with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Can I help? She asked. You know how to make salad? I can manage lettuce and tomatoes. He pulled vegetables from the fridge and set her up at the counter with a cutting board. They worked in comfortable silence, the kind that felt earned rather than forced. Emma reappeared wearing different clothes, pink sweatpants and a t-shirt with a dinosaur on it. I'm clean now. Did you actually wash your hands or just change clothes? Daniel asked without looking up. Emma's face gave her away. Go wash your hands. She sighed dramatically and stomped off. How do you always know? Evelyn asked. Practice. Also, she's terrible at lying. He dumped pasta into the now boiling water. She gets that from me. Sarah was an excellent liar. There was no bitterness in his voice when he said it, just observation. Do you hear from her? Emma's mom? Christmas and birthday cards. Sometimes a text to ask how Emma's doing, but she hasn't seen her in over a year. He stirred the pasta. Her choice, not mine. I never kept her away. She just stopped trying. That must be hard. For Emma. It is. She pretends it isn't, but it is. He paused. Therapist says that's normal, that kids internalize abandonment differently. We're working on it. Emma came back, hands dripping wet. Happy now? Ecstatic. Go set the table. She got out plates and forks, setting them carefully. The table was small, just enough for 3 people. Evelyn helped carry food over, the pasta, the sauce, the salad she'd made, garlic bread that Daniel had heated in the oven. They sat and ate. Emma talked nonstop about school and her friends and a substitute teacher who let them have extra recess. Daniel listened with the patient attention of someone who genuinely cared about 7-year-old social politics. Evelyn found herself relaxing. This was so far from her normal life, the business dinners at expensive restaurants, the carefully curated conversations, the constant awareness of who was watching. Here, nobody cared that she was a billionaire. Nobody cared about her company or her breakup or her reputation. She was just Eve. A woman eating spaghetti with new friends. After dinner, Emma wanted to show Evelyn her room. It was small but cozy, every surface covered with stuffed animals and books and art projects. The window seat Daniel had mentioned was indeed covered with pillows and animals arranged just so. This is where I read, Emma explained, and where I think about important things. What kind of important things? Like what I want to be when I grow up, and if mermaids are real, and why Daddy is sad sometimes, even when he's smiling. Evelyn's throat tightened. What do you think about that last one? Emma sat on her bed, swinging her legs. I think grown-ups are complicated. They feel lots of things at the same time and don't know how to sort them out. You're very smart. I know. She said it without ego, just fact. Are you sad and smiling at the same time? Evelyn sat next to her. Yeah, I am. Why? Because I'm figuring out that a lot of things I thought were important actually weren't, and that's sad. But I'm also finding new things that might be important, and that makes me smile. Emma nodded like this made perfect sense. Like what things? Like building castles and eating tacos on the beach and having dinner with new friends. We're friends? I think so, if you want to be. Emma threw her arms around Evelyn in another unexpected hug. I want to be. They went back to the living room. Daniel had cleaned up the kitchen and was now on the floor with some kind of wooden puzzle that looked complicated. She show you her whole life story? He asked. Most of it, Evelyn confirmed. Sorry, she doesn't get a lot of adult visitors. I don't mind. Emma joined her father on the floor with the puzzle. Evelyn sat on the couch and watched them work together. The easy way they communicated without words, how Daniel let Emma figure things out before offering help. Do you have to go? Emma asked suddenly, looking up at Evelyn. Eventually, yeah. When? I don't know yet. Because of your company? Evelyn blinked. How did you know about that? Emma shrugged. You said you have a company. Companies need bosses, so you have to go back to be the boss. Daniel looked uncomfortable. Emma! It's okay, Evelyn said. She came down to the floor, joining them with the puzzle. Yeah, eventually I have to go back. I have people depending on me. Like how I depend on Daddy? Sort of, but different. They don't need me like you need your dad. They just need me to make decisions and help the company work. Can't someone else do that? It was the same question Evelyn had been avoiding for days. Someone else is doing it right now, and they're doing great. Which makes me wonder. She trailed off. Daniel and Emma both looked at her, waiting. Which makes me wonder if they need me at all, she finished quietly. Everyone needs someone, Emma said with absolute conviction. Maybe just not for the reasons you think. Evelyn stared at this 6-year-old philosopher, then at Daniel, who looked equally surprised. Where does she get this stuff? Evelyn asked. I have no idea. Her mother was practical and I'm barely keeping it together. She just came out wise. He ruffled Emma's hair. It's unsettling, honestly. They finished the puzzle together. Emma's bedtime was 8, which she negotiated up to 8:15, then 8:20, before Daniel finally put his foot down. Say goodnight to Eve, he instructed. Good night, Eve. Will you be here next Saturday? I'll try, Evelyn said. It was the most honest answer she could give. Daniel walked Emma to her room for the bedtime routine. Evelyn waited in the living room, looking at the photos on the mantel again. So much life in these captured moments, so much joy despite the obvious hardship. Daniel came back 15 minutes later. She wanted 3 stories. I negotiated down to 2. Tough negotiator. She gets that from her mother, too. He sat on the couch, suddenly looking exhausted. Sorry about the interrogation. She gets attached easily. It's sweet. It's also a problem when people leave. He said it carefully, not accusing, just honest. Evelyn sat next to him. I'm not trying to hurt her. I know, but you are leaving eventually, and she doesn't understand temporary very well. Do any of us? He smiled at that. Fair point. They sat in silence. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and distant traffic sounds. Can I ask you something? Evelyn said. Why are you being so nice to me? You don't know me. I could be anyone. You could be, but you're not. He turned to face her. You're someone who's running from something painful, and you showed up on a beach looking like you might walk into the ocean and not come back. And my daughter, who has excellent instincts, decided you needed help, so we're helping. That's simple? That's simple. People don't usually help without wanting something. What would I want from you? It was a good question. He clearly didn't know who she really was, didn't know about her money or her company. He just knew Eve. Sad, lost, trying to figure things out. I don't know, she admitted. Maybe people help because that's what people do. At least, that's what people should do. He stood, stretched. It's getting late. You probably want to get back. She did and didn't. The motel room was lonely, even if it was her chosen loneliness. But staying here felt dangerous, like she might get too comfortable in this borrowed life. Yeah, she said, I should go. He walked her to the door. On the porch, she turned back. Thank you, she said, for today, for all of this. I needed it more than you know. Any time. He meant it. And Eve, whatever you decide about your company, about staying or going, make sure it's what you actually want, not what you think you should want. She drove back to the motel thinking about that. What did she actually want? A week ago, she would have said she wanted her old life back, her relationship restored, her reputation intact, everything back to normal. Now she wasn't sure normal was what she wanted at all. Back in her room, she pulled out her laptop for the first time in days, opened her email. The flood of messages had slowed to a trickle. Rebecca was handling things. The board had stopped panicking. The news cycle had moved on to some other scandal. The world, it turned out, didn't need Evelyn Cross every minute of every day. She opened a new document and started typing. Not a business plan or a strategy memo, just thoughts. Honest, messy thoughts about what the last 2 weeks had taught her. That success without happiness was just expensive misery. That being needed wasn't the same as being valued. That she'd spent 10 years building a company and forgotten to build a life. That a 6-year-old and her carpenter father had shown her more about resilience than any business book ever had. She wrote until her eyes burned, until the words stopped coming. Then she closed the laptop and looked out at the dark ocean. Tomorrow was Sunday. She had no plans, no meetings, no obligations, just time. Time to think, time to decide what came next. And for the first time since everything fell apart, that felt like enough. Sunday morning came with rain. Evelyn woke to the sound of it hammering against the motel window, heavy drops that blurred the ocean into gray smudges. She lay in bed listening, surprised to find she wasn't disappointed. The rain felt appropriate somehow. Cleansing. Her phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. Beach day canceled due to weather. Emma devastated. Offering backup plan. Indoor castle building at our place. 10 a.m. No pressure. Evelyn stared at the message for a long time. She should say no. Should maintain some distance. Should remember this was temporary, and getting more attached only made leaving harder. She texted back, I'll bring coffee. At the local coffee shop, a tiny place called The Grind that probably violated several health codes but made excellent espresso. She ordered 3 drinks. A black coffee for Daniel, hot chocolate for Emma, and a latte for herself. The barista, a kid who couldn't be older than 19 with more piercings than seemed structurally sound, didn't recognize her. Just took her order and made small talk about the weather. First real storm of the season, he said, foam-arting a leaf into her latte. Roads up the coast are probably going to flood. You staying local? Yeah, Evelyn said. Local. She drove to Daniel's house carefully, the windshield wipers working overtime. When she knocked, Emma threw open the door wearing pajamas covered in unicorns and a serious expression. You came! I brought hot chocolate. Emma's eyes went wide. With whipped cream? Of course. You're my favorite person now. Daniel appeared behind his daughter, barefoot and wearing sweatpants and a faded college t-shirt. His hair stuck up in several directions. He looked like he'd just woken up. Sorry, he said, running a hand through the chaos. I was planning to be more presentable. You said 10. It's 10. I said 10 thinking you'd show up at 10:30 like normal people. Emma and I operate on what she calls daddy time, which means everything runs 15 minutes late. 20 minutes, Emma corrected, taking her hot chocolate carefully. Sometimes 30. Thank you for that, Daniel said to his daughter. Evelyn stepped inside, shaking rain from her jacket. The house smelled like pancakes and something burnt. Did you cook? She asked. Attempted to cook. There was an incident with the toaster. Daniel gestured vaguely at the kitchen. Emma wanted cinnamon toast. The toaster had other ideas. It caught on fire a little bit, Emma said cheerfully, but just a little bit. Define little bit, Evelyn said. Small enough that we caught it before the smoke alarm went off, Daniel said, which by Emma's standards counts as a successful breakfast. They settled in the living room. Emma had apparently been planning for this rainy day contingency. She'd dragged out every building toy she owned. Blocks, Legos, Lincoln logs, and what appeared to be an elaborate marble run set still in its box. "We're building the biggest castle ever," Emma announced. "Bigger than the beach ones, because we have more time since we're inside and can't get wet." "Sound logic," Evelyn said. They started building on the coffee table, which Daniel pushed against the wall to create more floor space. Emma directed operations with her usual commanding presence, while Daniel and Evelyn followed orders and occasionally made suggestions that were either accepted or rejected with swift judgment. "No, that tower is too skinny," Emma said, dismantling something Evelyn had just spent 5 minutes on. "It needs to be wider at the bottom, like a pyramid. Engineers actually build that way," Daniel said to Evelyn. "She's not wrong." "How does she know that?" "YouTube. I made the mistake of showing her a video about architecture once. Now she watches them constantly and critiques my carpentry." "You cut that board crooked last week," Emma said without looking up. "I saw." "I did not." "You did. It was a little bit crooked. Not a lot, just a little." Daniel looked at Evelyn. "See what I deal with?" They built for an hour, the castle growing more complex and structurally questionable. Emma insisted on adding a sky tower that definitely violated the laws of physics, but somehow stayed upright through sheer will and strategic block placement. Around 11, Emma got bored with the castle and wanted to set up the marble run. This involved reading incomprehensible instructions and attempting to attach plastic pieces that didn't seem designed to actually fit together. "Who designed this?" Daniel muttered, struggling with 2 pieces that should have connected but refused to. "Someone who hates parents, that's who." "You're doing it wrong," Emma said. "I'm following the instructions." "The instructions are wrong." "The instructions can't be wrong." "They can if whoever wrote them was dumb." Evelyn laughed so hard she had to set down her coffee. "You think this is funny?" Daniel asked, but he was smiling. "I think you're getting outsmarted by a 6-year-old. 6 3/4, Emma corrected. She took the pieces from her father and somehow got them to connect immediately. "See? Easy." Daniel looked at Evelyn. "I'm being humiliated in my own home." "You're doing great," Evelyn assured him. They eventually got the marble run assembled. It took up half the living room floor, a complex network of ramps and turns and spirals. Emma dropped a marble in the top, and they all watched it wind through the course, clicking and rattling, until it emerged at the bottom. "Again!" Emma demanded. They ran marbles through the course until even Emma got tired of it. The rain continued outside, steady and relentless. Evelyn found herself relaxing into the lazy rhythm of the day. No schedule, no pressure, just time passing slowly in a warm house while the storm raged. Around noon, Emma announced she was hungry. Daniel disappeared into the kitchen and returned with sandwich supplies. "PB&J, okay?" he asked Evelyn. "That's the extent of my lunch repertoire." "Perfect." They ate on the floor, surrounded by blocks and marbles and castle pieces. Emma talked about her upcoming school week, a field trip to the aquarium, a spelling test she wasn't worried about, a boy named Mason who'd stolen her eraser and she'd stolen it back and gotten in trouble even though he started it. "Life's not fair," Daniel said with practiced sympathy. "You always say that." "Because it's always true." After lunch, Emma wanted to watch a movie. Daniel set her up with something animated on the TV, then gestured for Evelyn to follow him to the kitchen. "Want real coffee?" he asked quietly. "The stuff you brought is probably cold by now." "Sure." He made a fresh pot using a machine that looked older than Emma. They leaned against the counter, listening to the rain and the muffled sounds of the movie from the other room. "Thanks for coming," Daniel said. "I know it's probably weird, hanging out with a kid and her dad all day." "It's not weird. It's nice." "Even with the toaster fire?" "Especially with the toaster fire." Evelyn paused. "Can I ask you something?" "Always." "Do you ever resent it, being a single parent, having all the responsibility?" Daniel was quiet, really considering the question. "Sometimes." "Yeah. There are days when I'd kill for someone else to make the decisions, someone else to handle the hard stuff." He poured coffee into 2 mugs, hands steady. "But then I think about the alternative. Sarah could have fought for custody, could have wanted to be more involved, and I'd have to share Emma, have to coordinate schedules and compromise on parenting decisions." He handed Evelyn a mug. "This way, at least, I get to make the calls, get to be the one she depends on. That's worth something." Even when it's hard? Especially when it's hard, the hard stuff is what matters. He took a sip of coffee. Why are you asking? Because I spent 10 years being the person everyone depended on, making all the decisions, having all the responsibility, and I thought I wanted that. Thought it made me important. And now I'm realizing that importance and happiness aren't the same thing. She wrapped both hands around her mug. You have Emma depending on you, and it gives you purpose. I had a whole company depending on me, and it just made me tired. Maybe because they didn't actually need you. They just needed someone. The words hit harder than he probably intended. What do you mean? Emma needs me specifically. Not a dad, not a parent. Me. Because I'm her person, and she's mine, and that's not replaceable. He set down his mug. But a company? A company needs a CEO, needs someone to make decisions and lead meetings and whatever else you do. But does it need you specifically, or would someone else do just as well? Evelyn thought about Rebecca, her COO, running things perfectly well for the past 2 weeks. Thought about the board's initial panic that had quickly settled once they realized the company wouldn't implode without her. I don't know if that makes me feel better or worse, she admitted. Better, I think, because it means you have a choice. You can go back if you want, or you can let someone else do it while you figure out what you actually want to be doing. What if I don't know what that is? Then you keep trying things until you figure it out. He smiled, like Emma with the puzzle pieces. She didn't know which ones fit. She just kept trying until something worked. From the living room, Emma called out, "Daddy, come here. This is the best part." Daniel rolled his eyes affectionately. I've seen this movie 17 times. I know what the best part is. But you have to watch it with me. Duty calls, he said to Evelyn. They went back to the living room. Emma had created a nest of blankets on the couch and demanded they both sit with her. Evelyn ended up squished between Daniel and Emma, a 6-year-old's bony elbow in her ribs and Daniel's shoulder warm against hers. The movie was something about a princess who didn't want to be a princess and ran away to become a baker. Emma narrated the entire thing despite having seen it 17 times. Halfway through, Emma fell asleep. She went down hard, the way kids do. 1 second talking about the princess's dress, and the next completely unconscious, her mouth slightly open. Daniel carefully extracted himself and lifted her gently. Be right back, he whispered. Evelyn stayed on the couch, suddenly alone in the quiet room. The movie kept playing, the princess now befriending a talking cat or something equally ridiculous. She could hear Daniel in the bedroom, the soft sounds of him tucking Emma in. When he came back, he turned off the movie and sat back down, leaving more space between them this time. She always crashes after lunch, he said. Runs full speed all morning, then just passes out. Must be nice? The napping or the energy? Both. They sat in comfortable silence. The rain had lessened to a steady patter instead of the earlier deluge. Evelyn found herself studying the room, the well-worn furniture, the crayon marks on the wall that someone had tried to clean but not quite succeeded, the pile of Emma's shoes by the door. This is a good life, she said quietly. It's my life. Don't know if it's good, but it's mine. It is good. You have a kid who adores you, a home, purpose. She paused. I have a penthouse that feels empty and a company full of people who'd replace me in a heartbeat if the board decided to. I doubt that's true. You'd be surprised. Evelyn pulled her knees up to her chest, making herself smaller. I was at a conference once, a couple years ago. One of those industry things where everyone pretends to listen to panels, but mostly just networks at the bar. And I overheard some VCs talking about my company, about how impressive it was, how I'd built something remarkable. That's good, right? Then one of them said, yeah, but how long until she burns out or gets married and steps back? We should probably have a succession plan. Evelyn smiled bitterly. I was standing 10 feet away. They didn't care. Or maybe they didn't think I counted as a real person. Just an asset that might depreciate. Daniel's jaw tightened. That's fucked up. That's business. She set her coffee down. And I played into it, worked harder, stayed later, proved I wouldn't burn out or step back or do any of the things women CEOs apparently do. I made myself indispensable. Except you weren't. Except I wasn't. She laughed, sharp and humorless. 2 weeks ago, I thought if I stepped away for even a day, everything would collapse. Now I've been gone 2 weeks and everything's fine. Better than fine. Rebecca's doing great. The board's happy. Stock price is actually up. So what does that tell you? That I wasted 10 years of my life building something that didn't need me? Or that you succeeded so well at building it that it can function without you, which means you're free? Evelyn looked at him. Free to do what? Whatever the hell you want. He said it simply, like it was obvious. You've got enough money that you never have to work again if you don't want to. You could travel, start a different company, learn to surf, adopt 18 cats. Literally anything. That's terrifying. Yeah, freedom usually is. He shifted on the couch to face her more directly. Can I tell you what I think? Please. I think you're scared that if you're not the CEO, if you're not the successful, powerful, important Evelyn Cross, you won't know who you are. And that's fair. We tie ourselves to our identities, our jobs, our roles. He paused. But the woman I've spent the last 2 weeks getting to know, she's not a CEO. She's just someone trying to figure her shit out, and she's pretty great. You don't know me, Evelyn said, but without conviction. I know you helped a random kid build sandcastles. I know you showed up today with coffee even though you had no reason to. I know you ask real questions and give real answers, and you're trying so hard to be honest even though it's clearly uncomfortable for you. He held her gaze. That's who you are when you're not performing, and that person doesn't need a company to matter. Evelyn felt tears building and tried to blink them back. Failed. One escaped, tracking down her cheek. Shit, she said, wiping at it. Sorry. Don't apologize for crying. I'm not a crier. I don't cry. Everyone cries. I haven't cried in front of someone in probably 5 years. Then you're overdue. Daniel stood, got a box of tissues from somewhere, handed it to her. Let it out. So she did. Not the ugly sobbing from the motel room that first night, but something quieter, steadier. She cried for the life she'd built that hadn't made her happy, for the relationship that had been broken long before Marcus cheated, for the years she'd spent being someone she thought she should be instead of figuring out who she actually was. Daniel didn't try to fix it or make it better. He just sat there, patient and present, occasionally handing her another tissue. When she finally stopped, Evelyn felt wrung out but clearer. Better? Daniel asked. Maybe. I don't know. She blew her nose, decidedly unglamorous. God, this is embarrassing. Why? Because I'm a mess. Because I'm falling apart in a stranger's living room. We're not strangers anymore. And everyone's a mess. Some people are just better at hiding it. They sat in silence for a while. Outside, the rain had stopped completely, leaving everything washed clean and dripping. I should probably go, Evelyn said eventually. Let you have your Sunday back. You're not imposing. Still. She stood gathering her things. Daniel walked her to the door. On the porch, she turned back. Can I ask you one more thing? Shoot. When you figured out Sarah was leaving, when you knew your life was about to completely change, what got you through it? Daniel leaned against the doorframe, thinking. Honestly, anger got me through the first part. Just pure rage that she could give up so easily. That she could look at Emma and decide she didn't want to do this anymore. He paused. But anger only takes you so far. Eventually, I had to decide what I wanted my life to look like. What kind of father I wanted to be. What kind of person. And I decided I wanted to be someone Emma could be proud of. Someone who showed her that when things break, you find a way to build something new. He smiled slightly. It's not perfect. I still have days where I'm angry or sad or just completely exhausted, but at least I'm building something that matters. The sandcastles, Evelyn said quietly. The sandcastles. And yeah, they don't last. But maybe that's the point. Maybe the building is what matters, not the finished product. Evelyn nodded, not trusting herself to speak. You going to be okay? Daniel asked. I think so, eventually. Good enough. She drove back to the motel through streets shiny with rainwater. The ocean was gray and choppy, waves higher than usual. She parked and sat in her car for a long time, watching the water. Then she pulled out her phone and opened her email. Started typing before she could second-guess herself. Rebecca, I've been thinking a lot over the past 2 weeks. About the company, about my role, about what I actually want. I'm not coming back as CEO. I know that's not what you expected to hear. It's not what I expected to write. But it's the truth. I built this company because I had something to prove. To myself, to the world, to everyone who said I couldn't. And I did prove it. Cross Industries is successful beyond anything I imagined. But somewhere along the way, I lost track of why I was doing this. It stopped being about building something meaningful and started being about not failing. About maintaining an image. About being the person everyone expected me to be. I don't want to do that anymore. I'm not abandoning the company. I'll stay on the board. I'll be available for strategic decisions. But I need to step back from day-to-day operations. And I think you should be the one to step up. You've been running things perfectly well without me for 2 weeks. The board trusts you, the employees respect you, and more importantly, you actually want this. You love the work in a way I haven't for a long time. So it's yours, if you want it. I'll make it official when I get back. We can do a proper transition, press releases, all the corporate theater. But I wanted you to know first, thank you for holding down the fort while I figured my life out. Thank you for being honest about what the company needed. And thank you for not trying to fix me when I was breaking. She read it 3 times, then hit send before the fear could stop her. Immediately, her chest felt lighter, like she'd been holding her breath for 10 years and finally exhaled. Her phone rang 5 minutes later. Rebecca. Evelyn answered. That was fast. Are you sure? Rebecca's voice was careful. Because I'll do it if you really want me to, but I don't want you to make a decision you'll regret. I'm sure. Okay. A pause. Can I ask what changed? Evelyn looked out at the ocean, thinking about sandcastles and toaster fires, and a 6-year-old who understood impermanence better than most adults. I met some people who reminded me that there's more to life than being impressive, she said, and I realized I'd rather be happy than important. That's fair. Rebecca sounded like she was smiling. For what it's worth, I think you're making the right call. Yeah. You've been miserable for at least a year, maybe longer. We all saw it, even if we didn't say anything. She paused. You deserve to be happy, Evelyn. And if that means stepping back, then step back. They talked logistics for a few more minutes, timing, board meetings, how to announce it. But Evelyn barely paid attention. She'd made the decision. Everything else was just details. After hanging up, she sat in the car until the lights started to fade. Then she went inside, ordered Chinese food from the place down the street, and ate it while watching the sun set over the ocean. Her phone buzzed with messages, some supportive, some concerned, some clearly angry. The board would have opinions. The press would have a field day. Her mother would probably have a stroke. Evelyn turned her phone off and opened her laptop instead. She looked at the document she'd started last night, the messy thoughts about what she'd learned. She added to it now, typing until her fingers hurt and her eyes blurred. About how success was supposed to make you feel invincible, but mostly just made you tired. About how she'd confused being needed with being valued. About how a stranger and his daughter had shown her more kindness in 2 weeks than she'd experienced in years of professional networking. About how she'd spent 10 years building a company and forgotten to build a life. And now she had to figure out what that life was supposed to look like. She didn't have answers yet, but for the first time she wasn't terrified of not knowing. Around 10, she closed the laptop and walked down to the beach one more time. The sand was damp from the rain, packed firm under her feet. The waves were calmer now, the storm having blown itself out. She stood at the water's edge and thought about the castles they'd built. How they'd worked so hard knowing the tide would take them. How Emma had wanted to destroy them herself rather than let the ocean do it slowly. There was something powerful in that, in choosing how things ended instead of letting them fall apart on their own. Evelyn had built an empire. Now she was choosing to walk away from it, not because she'd failed, but because success at the wrong thing was still failure. She stayed until the cold drove her back inside, climbed into the uncomfortable motel bed, pulled the scratchy blanket over herself, and slept dreamlessly until morning when her phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Next Saturday, don't forget, Mermaid Palace. Evelyn smiled and typed back, I'll be there, and meant it. The week passed differently than any week Evelyn could remember. Monday, she woke up without an alarm and went to Rosie's for breakfast. Tuesday, she hiked the coastal trail until her legs ached. Wednesday, she sat in the bookstore for 3 hours reading a novel she'd bought on impulse and actually finished it. Thursday, she helped Helen sort donations at the community center and learned more about the town in 2 hours than she had in 2 weeks. And every day, she didn't check the company Slack, didn't refresh her email obsessively, didn't feel the familiar panic of being disconnected. The board had responded to her resignation with predictable chaos. Some were supportive, others threatened legal action that their lawyers quickly explained wouldn't hold up. Her mother had left 7 increasingly frantic voicemails that Evelyn still hadn't listened to. Marcus had sent another email that she'd deleted without reading, but Rebecca had stepped into the CEO role like she'd been waiting for it her whole life, which she probably had been. The company was fine, better than fine. It turned out the world kept spinning when Evelyn Cross stopped trying to control it. Friday night, she sat in her motel room and realized she'd been here almost 3 weeks. The room had started to feel familiar. The water stain that looked like Florida, the way the heater clicked on at odd intervals, the smell of salt air that never quite left. She should probably find something more permanent if she was staying, or figure out what came next if she wasn't. But tomorrow was Saturday, and she'd promised Emma a mermaid palace. She woke early, drove to the beach, and found them already there. Emma was arranging shells in careful patterns, and Daniel was digging what appeared to be a foundation trench. "You're early," Daniel said, looking up with a smile. "Didn't want to miss anything." Emma ran over and grabbed her hand. "We're making it different this time. Look, I drew plans." She held up a piece of paper covered in crayon drawings that might have been architecture or might have been abstract art. "See? The mermaid palace goes underwater, so we have to dig down first." "That's ambitious." "Daddy said that too, but I told him we're ambitious people." Daniel caught Evelyn's eye and grinned. "She's been using that word all week. I'm not sure she knows what it means." "I do too. It means we do big things even when they're hard." "Okay, that's actually pretty accurate," Evelyn admitted. They started digging, carving out a depression in the sand that Emma insisted had to be deeper, deeper, keep going. By the time she was satisfied, they'd created something that looked more like an archaeological excavation than a castle foundation. "Perfect," Emma declared. "Now we build the palace inside." The construction was complex and frequently collapsed. Emma would design something elaborate, they'd build it, and the walls would slump almost immediately. But instead of getting frustrated, she'd just redesign and they'd try again. "Why doesn't she get upset when it falls?" Evelyn asked Daniel quietly while Emma was distracted arranging shells. "Because she expects it to fall. She knows we're building in sand." He added more support to a wall. "That's the thing about kids. They understand impermanence better than adults. We're the ones who think everything should last forever." "When did you get so wise?" "I'm not wise. I'm just tired enough that I stopped fighting reality." He paused. "How are you doing? With everything?" Evelyn knew he meant the company, the resignation, all of it. "Better. Scared, but better." "Scared of what?" "Of not knowing what comes next. I've had a plan my entire life. School, then startup, then scaling the company. Every step mapped out." She smoothed sand with her hands. "Now I don't have a plan. I just have time." "Is that so bad?" "It's terrifying." Emma came back with an armful of seaweed. "For the mermaid gardens," she explained, draping it artistically over the castle walls. They worked until noon, the mermaid palace growing stranger and more beautiful. It had towers and caves and Emma's seaweed gardens, plus what she insisted was a dolphin landing pad that looked like a flat spot where a tower had fallen over. When it was done, they sat back and looked at it. "It's the best one yet," Emma announced. "It's pretty great," Daniel agreed. Evelyn pulled out her phone and took a picture before she could stop herself. This time not to post or share, just to remember. To have proof that she'd sat on a beach and built something impossible with a 6-year-old who believed in mermaids. "Hungry?" Daniel asked. "Starving." "Taco truck?" "Obviously." They walked along this beach, Emma running ahead as usual, but this time, when Evelyn's phone buzzed, she checked it. A text from Rebecca. "Board meeting went well. Everyone's on board with the transition. We're making the announcement Monday." Evelyn typed back. "Good. How are you holding up?" "Terrified, excited, probably going to throw up." "That sounds about right. You'll be great. Thanks. When are you coming back to the city?" Evelyn looked up at the ocean, at Emma chasing seagulls, at Daniel walking beside her with his hands in his pockets and his face to the sun. "Not sure yet," she typed, still figuring things out. At the taco truck, they ran into Helen, who was ordering enough food for what appeared to be a small army. "Community center lunch," she explained when she saw Evelyn staring. "You should come. We're doing a thing." "What kind of thing?" "Does it matter? Free food, decent company, better than sitting alone." Helen paid for her order and turned back. 2:00. Don't be late." She left before Evelyn could respond. "Helen doesn't really do optional invitations," Daniel said. "I'm noticing that." They ate their tacos, then Daniel checked his watch. "I've got a job at 1. Guy needs his deck rebuilt, and he's paying extra for weekend work." "We can't go with you?" Emma asked, disappointed. "Not this time, monster. Too many power tools. Grandma's coming to get you in about an hour." Emma's face brightened. "Can Eve come to our house until Grandma comes?" Daniel looked at Evelyn, who nodded. "Sure." Back at Daniel's house, Emma immediately wanted to show Evelyn her latest drawings, a series of increasingly elaborate castles, each labeled with the date they'd built it. There was last week's Dragon Castle, this week's Mermaid Palace, and several future designs including something called a Rainbow Cloud Fortress that appeared to involve actual clouds somehow. "This is very organized," Evelyn said. "I'm keeping track. So when I'm older, I can remember all the castles we built." Emma carefully added today's Mermaid Palace to the collection. "Do you keep track of things?" "I used to keep track of everything. Meetings, deals, metrics, every detail. But not anymore?" "Not as much." Evelyn sat on the floor next to her. "I'm trying to remember the important things instead of just all the things." "What's important?" Such a simple question. Such an impossible answer. What was important? "This," Evelyn said finally. "Being here. Building castles with you. Having dinner with your dad. Helping Helen sort donations. Actually reading a book instead of just buying it and letting it sit on my shelf." Emma considered this seriously. "My mom thought work was more important than me." The words hung in the air. Daniel had gone to change clothes for his job, so it was just the two of them. "I'm sorry," Evelyn said quietly. "It's okay. I was sad about it for a long time, but Daddy says she was confused about what mattered, and now I have Daddy and he's not confused." "Your dad is a very smart man." "I know." Emma picked up a purple crayon and started drawing. "Are you confused?" "About what?" "About what's important." Evelyn watched this little girl, 6 years old and somehow wiser than most adults she knew. "I was, for a long time, but I think I'm figuring it out." "Good. Being confused is hard." They drew together until Daniel came back out, wearing work boots and a tool belt. He kissed Emma's head and told her to behave for her grandmother. "I always behave," Emma said. "That's a lie, and we both know it." He left, and Evelyn stayed with Emma until a silver sedan pulled up outside. A woman in her 60s got out, moving with the careful precision of someone with bad knees. "That's Grandma," Emma said, running to the door. Evelyn followed, suddenly nervous. Meeting parents felt official somehow, real. The woman, Daniel's mother, clearly she had the same warm eyes, took in Evelyn with one sweeping glance. "You must be Eve," she said. "I'm Patricia. Danny's told me about you." "He has?" Said you've been helping with the castle building, and that Emma's gotten attached." "She's a great kid." "She is." Patricia's gaze was assessing but not unkind. "You staying in town long?" "I'm not sure yet." "Fair enough." She turned to Emma. "Ready to go, sweetheart? Grandpa made cookies." Emma grabbed her overnight bag and hugged Evelyn goodbye. "See you next Saturday?" "Maybe," Evelyn said, because she still couldn't promise more than that. After they left, Evelyn stood in Daniel's quiet house, suddenly unsure what to do. She should leave, go back to the motel. But Helen's invitation echoed in her head. She locked up Daniel's house. He'd given her the spare key without making it weird, and drove to the community center. The thing turned out to be a potluck lunch that had expanded into some kind of town gathering. There were maybe 40 people, ranging from Helen's age down to babies and carriers. Long tables were covered with food, casseroles and salads and desserts that looked homemade. Helen spotted her immediately. "You came. Good. Grab a plate." Evelyn filled her plate and found herself sitting between Helen and an older man who introduced himself as George, and then didn't say another word, just ate his pasta salad in peaceful silence. A woman across the table was talking about her daughter's college applications. Another was complaining about the road repairs that were supposed to start in the spring, but probably wouldn't. Someone else was organizing a beach cleanup for next month. Normal conversations. Normal lives. Nobody talking about quarterly earnings or market disruption or any of the things Evelyn had spent 10 years discussing. She realized she couldn't remember the last time she'd had a conversation that wasn't about work. "You look thoughtful," Helen said. "Just thinking about how different this is from my usual life." "Different good or different bad?" "Different good, I think." Evelyn paused. "Can I ask you something? Can't promise I'll answer, but you can ask. Why did you invite me here? To the potluck that first time? To this? You don't know me." Helen set down her fork and looked at Evelyn directly. "You had that look, the one people get when they're running from something, and I figured you had two choices, keep running or stop and deal with whatever it is. This seemed like a good place to stop." "That's simple?" "That's simple." Helen picked up her fork again. "Plus, you looked miserable and rich, which is the worst kind of miserable. Poor people at least have the dignity of a good reason. Rich people who are miserable are just wasting their lives." Evelyn couldn't help it. She laughed. "That's harsh." "It's true. You've got resources most people will never have, and you were using them to be unhappy in a fancy hotel instead of unhappy in a cheap motel. At least the motel is honest. So you invited me to find honesty?" "I invited you because kindness doesn't cost anything, and you looked like you needed some." Helen took a bite of something that looked suspiciously like ambrosia salad. "Did it help?" Evelyn thought about the past 3 weeks, about sandcastles and toaster fires and terrible motel coffee, about learning to sleep past 6 a.m., and reading a book just because she wanted to, and sitting on a beach without checking her phone, about remembering how to be a person instead of a position. "Yeah," she said, "it helped." After lunch, some people started cleaning up while others moved chairs to create a makeshift performance space. Apparently there was going to be music, a local guitarist who played at these things sometimes. Evelyn helped Helen stack chairs, and they worked in comfortable silence until Helen said, "So what are you going to do?" "About what?" "About your life. You can't hide in a motel forever." "Why not?" "Because eventually you'll get bored or broke, and you don't strike me as someone who's going broke anytime soon." Helen set down a chair. "You've been here 3 weeks. You've quit your job. Don't look surprised. This is a small town, and people talk. You've made friends. You've found some peace. But at some point, you have to decide what comes next." "What if I don't know?" "Then you make your best guess and see what happens. That's all any of us do." The guitarist started playing, something soft and jazzy that filled the room. People settled in to listen, and Evelyn found a spot against the wall. She pulled out her phone and opened her notes app, added to the document she'd been keeping. "What I've learned: success without happiness is just expensive suffering. Being needed isn't the same as being valued. You can build empires and still be empty. Sometimes the most important thing you can do is admit you don't have all the answers. Healing doesn't look like what you expect. It looks like sandcastles and bad coffee, and a 6-year-old who tells the truth without fear. The people who matter don't care about your title or your money or your achievements. They care about whether you show up, and showing up is harder and more important than anything else." She stared at the words for a long time, then added one more line. "More. Maybe the point isn't to figure it all out. Maybe the point is just to keep building, even when you know it won't last forever." The music played. People listened or chatted quietly. The afternoon light came through the windows in long golden shafts. Evelyn closed her eyes and let herself just be present, just be here, in this moment, with these people who knew her as Eve and didn't care who Evelyn Cross was supposed to be. Around 4, her phone rang. Daniel. She stepped outside to answer. "Hey. Hey, job ran long. I'm just wrapping up. Emma texted me approximately 40 times to make sure I knew you were coming next Saturday." "Did she?" "She's very concerned about the castle's schedule." He paused. "My parents invited us for dinner tomorrow, Sunday thing they do most weeks. Emma wants you to come." "Daniel, I know, it's a lot. You can say no, but I figured I'd ask." Evelyn looked back through the window at the community center, at Helen laughing with friends, at the guitarist packing up his instrument. "What time?" she asked. 6. Fair warning. My mom will have opinions about your life choices. She has opinions about everyone's life choices. I can handle opinions. Yeah, I think you can. They hung up, and Evelyn went back inside. The event was winding down, people gathering their dishes and saying goodbyes. Helen was by the door with her coat on. You look less miserable, she observed. I feel less miserable. Good, keep doing whatever you're doing. Helen patted her arm. See you around, kid. Evelyn drove back to the motel as the sun started setting. The ocean was calm, the sky turning pink and orange and purple. She parked but didn't go inside immediately. Instead, she walked down to the beach one more time. The Mermaid Palace was gone, claimed by the tide like all the castles before it. Just a vague depression in the sand that would be completely erased by tomorrow. But Evelyn could still see it in her mind. The towers and caves, Emma's seaweed gardens, the dolphin landing pad. She could remember building it, the satisfaction of creating something knowing it wouldn't last. Her phone buzzed. An email from her mother with the subject line, "We need to talk." Evelyn opened it, read the first line about how she was throwing away her legacy and embarrassing the family, and then archived it without finishing. She'd deal with her mother eventually, have the conversation that needed having, but not today. Today she just wanted to stand on this beach and watch the sunset and feel the weight that had been sitting on her chest for 10 years finally starting to lift. The next day she drove to Daniel's parents' house with wine she'd bought at the local store and no idea what to expect. The house was bigger than Daniel's, but just as warm. His father answered the door, a quiet man who shook her hand and immediately went back to watching football. His mother was in the kitchen, commanding the space with the confidence of someone who'd been cooking in it for 40 years. "Eve," she said. "Good, you came. Danny, get her a drink. Eve, you eat meat, or are you one of those California vegetarians?" "I eat meat," Evelyn said. "Thank goodness. I made pot roast." Emma appeared from somewhere and immediately attached herself to Evelyn's side, giving her a full report on what she'd done at her grandparents' house. Cookies, a movie, cookies, playing in the yard, more cookies. "She might be on a sugar high," Patricia said dryly. Dinner was chaotic and loud, and nothing like the formal meals Evelyn was used to. Emma talked over everyone. Daniel's father told bad jokes. Patricia asked pointed questions about Evelyn's life that Evelyn answered honestly because lying to this woman seemed impossible. "So you just quit," Patricia said. "No plan, no backup, just walked away." "Mom," Daniel warned, "I'm asking. She can tell me if it's none of my business." "It's fine," Evelyn said. "And yes, I just quit. Because staying was making me miserable, and I realized life's too short to be miserable just because you're good at something." Patricia studied her for a long moment. "Smart girl." "Really? Really? Too many people stay in things that kill them slowly. Jobs, relationships, cities. They convince themselves they have to because of responsibilities or expectations or whatever." She passed the potatoes. "But you only get one life. Wasting it trying to make other people happy is stupid." "Patricia," Daniel's father said mildly. "What?" "It's true. Our son stayed in a marriage that was making him miserable for 2 years because he thought he had to. And you know what happened?" "She left anyway," Daniel said quietly. "She left anyway because staying in something broken doesn't fix it. It just breaks you too." Emma was watching this conversation with wide eyes, like she was watching a tennis match. After dinner, Patricia shooed everyone into the living room while she and Evelyn cleaned up. In the kitchen, she handed Evelyn a dish towel and got straight to the point. "My son likes you," she said. "We're friends." "I didn't say he loved you. I said he likes you. There's a difference." She scrubbed a pot with more force than seemed necessary. "He's a good man. He deserves someone who'll stick around." "I know he's a good man." "Do you?" Patricia turned to look at her. "Because from where I'm standing, you look like someone who's still figuring out whether to stay or run. And I need to know if my granddaughter is going to get attached to someone who's going to disappear in a month." Evelyn felt the weight of the question, the honesty of it. "I don't know if I'm staying. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm trying to figure it out." "Fair enough." Patricia went back to scrubbing. "Just don't drag it out. Emma's already lost one woman who was supposed to stick around. She doesn't need to lose another." "I would never, you wouldn't mean to, but meaning to and doing are different things." She rinsed the pot and set it in the drainer. Look, I like you. You're clearly smart, you're good with Emma, and you're honest about being a mess. That's more than most people manage. But if you're going to be in their lives, be in their lives. Don't be one more person who's just passing through. Evelyn nodded, throat tight. I understand. They finished the dishes in silence. When they rejoined the others, Emma was half asleep on Daniel's lap, fighting to keep her eyes open. Someone's crashed, Daniel said. I'm not tired, Emma mumbled, proving she was by immediately yawning. Sure you're not? Come on, monster. Time to go. They said their goodbyes. Patricia hugged Evelyn and whispered, Think about what I said. In the car, following Daniel's truck back to his house, Evelyn did think about it, about what it meant to stick around, to commit to something without knowing how it would turn out. She'd spent her entire career planning everything, controlling every variable, ensuring success before taking risks. But life didn't work that way. Relationships didn't work that way. You just had to build and hope it stood. At Daniel's house, he carried a sleeping Emma inside while Evelyn waited on the porch. When he came back out, he sat on the steps and she joined him. Sorry about my mom, he said. She's protective. She should be. Emma's lucky to have her. She likes you, by the way. She told me after you left last time that you seemed real, which is high praise from her. They sat in comfortable silence, the neighborhood quiet around them. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. A car drove past slowly. Can I tell you something? Evelyn said. Always. 3 weeks ago, I came to that beach to decide if I wanted to keep living. Daniel went very still beside her. I didn't have a plan or anything, she continued. I just thought maybe walking into the ocean would be easier than facing everything that was broken in my life. And then I saw you and Emma building that castle, and I couldn't look away. She paused. Emma invited me to join you, and I don't know why I said yes, but I did. And you two saved my life that day. You know that, right? Daniel's voice was rough when he spoke. You saved your own life. We just gave you a reason to stick around long enough to do it. Maybe. She looked at him in the porch light. But I need you to know that these 3 weeks, the castles, the dinners, Emma's brutal honesty, your mom's pot roast, all of it mattered. It changed something fundamental in me. What changed? I stopped believing that my worth was tied to my success, that I had to be impressive to deserve happiness, that being needed was the same as being loved. She smiled, feeling tears building. You showed me that I could just be a person, just Eve, and that was enough. It was always enough, Daniel said quietly. You just couldn't see it. I can see it now. He reached over and took her hand, just held it, his palm warm against hers. They sat like that for a long time, not talking, just being present with each other. Finally, Evelyn said, I should go. Let you get some sleep. Yeah, but he didn't let go of her hand immediately. Daniel? Yeah? Thank you for everything, for letting me be part of your world for a while, for not asking questions you knew I couldn't answer, for just being patient while I figured my shit out. You're welcome. He squeezed her hand once, then released it. See you Saturday? See you Saturday. The week passed in a blur. Monday, the announcement went out about Rebecca's promotion. The press had a field day, think pieces about women in tech, speculation about why Evelyn really stepped down, hot takes that ranged from supportive to vicious. Evelyn read none of it. Tuesday, she had a video call with the board. It went better than expected, mostly because she'd stopped caring what they thought. She'd answer their questions, honor her commitments, but she wouldn't let them make her doubt her decision. Wednesday, her mother called. Evelyn answered. The conversation lasted an hour and was exactly as awful as expected. Her mother was hurt, angry, confused, couldn't understand how Evelyn could throw away everything they'd worked for. I worked for it, Evelyn said quietly. You worked for the idea of it, and I'm done living my life for your ideas. That's cruel. It's honest. I love you, Mom, but I can't be who you want me to be anymore. I have to figure out who I actually am. Her mother hung up without saying goodbye. Evelyn cried for 20 minutes, then went for a long walk and felt lighter than she had in years. Thursday, she started looking at apartments in town. Small ones, nothing fancy. Places where she could actually live instead of just staying. Friday, she made a decision. Saturday morning, she woke up early and drove to the beach. Daniel and Emma were already there, of course, starting the foundation for what Emma had declared would be a fairy forest castle. "You're here!" Emma ran over. "I'm here." Evelyn knelt down so she was at Emma's eye level. "And I need to tell you something." Emma's face went serious. "Okay. I'm going to stay in town for a while. Maybe a long while, which means I'll be here for castle building every Saturday if you want me." Emma's face split into a grin that made Evelyn's chest ache. "Really? Really? Did you hear that, Daddy? Eve's staying." Daniel looked at Evelyn over his daughter's head, and something passed between them. Understanding, hope, possibility. "I heard," he said. "That's good news." They built the fairy forest castle together, Emma directing operations while Daniel and Evelyn provided labor and moral support. It was elaborate and slightly magical, with towers made of sand and shells and bits of driftwood arranged to look like trees. When it was done, they sat back and looked at it. "It's perfect," Emma declared. "It won't last," Evelyn said gently. "The tide will take it, just like all the others." "I know." Emma leaned against her. "But we built it anyway. That's what matters." Daniel caught Evelyn's eye and smiled. They stayed until the tide started coming in, until the waves began their patient work of reclaiming the sand. Emma wanted to watch this time instead of destroying it themselves. "I want to see how the ocean does it," she explained. So they sat together and watched the water creep closer, wave by wave, each one taking a little more of their creation. The towers fell first, then the walls, then the carefully arranged shells scattered back into the sea. When it was gone, when there was nothing left but disturbed sand that would be smooth again by tomorrow, Emma stood up and brushed off her pants. "Okay," she said, "we can go now." "You're not sad?" Evelyn asked. "No, we'll just build a better one next week." She said it with absolute confidence, like this was the most obvious thing in the world. And maybe it was. Maybe that was the whole point of everything. You built things knowing they wouldn't last forever. You loved people knowing they might leave. You tried knowing you might fail. But you did it anyway, because the building was what mattered. The trying. The showing up week after week and choosing to create something, even if it was temporary, even if it was imperfect, even if the tide was always coming. They walked back to the parking lot together. Emma ran ahead as usual, chasing seagulls and shouting about next week's castle plans. Daniel fell into step beside Evelyn. "So you're really staying? For now?" "I found an apartment, small place above the bookstore." "That's a good location." "I thought so." She paused. "I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't have a plan or a 5-year strategy or any of the things I usually have. I just know that this place, this life, feels more real than anything I've had in 10 years. That's reason enough." They reached their cars. Emma was already buckled into Daniel's truck, impatient to get to the taco truck. "You coming to dinner tomorrow?" Daniel asked. "Sunday thing at my parents' is becoming a tradition, apparently." "Your mom invited me?" "My mom invited you. She also asked me if we were dating, which I told her was none of her business, which she took as confirmation that we definitely are." "Are we?" The question hung between them. Daniel stepped closer, close enough that Evelyn could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. "I don't know," he said honestly, "but I'd like to find out, if you're interested." Evelyn thought about all the reasons to say no. She was just figuring out who she was. She'd just ended a relationship. She was a mess, but she'd spent 10 years making the careful, strategic choice, the safe choice. Maybe it was time to make the brave one. "Yeah," she said. "I'm interested." He smiled, and it was like the sun coming out. "Good." Emma honked the horn from inside the truck. "Tacos, let's go." "Duty calls," Daniel said. "See you tomorrow?" "See you tomorrow." Evelyn watched them drive away, then sat in her car for a while, looking at the ocean. 3 weeks ago, she'd come to this beach ready to give up, ready to let the weight of her broken life pull her under. Now she was staying, building a new life from the pieces of the old one. Not because she had it all figured out, but because she'd learned that you didn't need to have it figured out to start building. You just needed to show up. To be honest. To keep trying even when things fell apart. To build sandcastles with people who mattered, knowing they wouldn't last forever, knowing the tide was always coming. And somehow, impossibly, that was enough. She pulled out her phone and opened her notes one last time. Read through everything she'd written over the past 3 weeks, all the thoughts and fears and realizations. Then she added one final entry. This is what I learned. Healing doesn't happen in boardrooms or therapy offices or expensive retreats. It happens in quiet moments with honest people who see you as you are and don't need you to be anything else. Success means nothing if you're miserable. Happiness means everything even if you're broke. And most of us spend our whole lives confusing the two. The best things in life are temporary, sunsets and sandcastles, and the way a child laughs when they're surprised. The trick is enjoying them while they're here instead of mourning them when they're gone. You can spend years building an empire and still be empty, or you can spend an afternoon building a sandcastle and feel whole. The difference is knowing what you're building for. And I'm done building for tomorrow, for success, for other people's approval. I'm building for today, for the people who show up, for the moments that matter even when they don't last. I'm building sandcastles, and that's enough. She closed her notes and started the car, drove to the taco truck where Daniel and Emma were waiting, ordered fish tacos, and sat on the wall overlooking the ocean. Emma chattered about next week's castle plans, something involving a dragon and a mermaid living together in peace, which would require very careful construction. Daniel caught Evelyn's eye and smiled, and Evelyn smiled back, tasting salt air and possibility, feeling lighter than she had in a decade. The tide was always coming. The castles would always fall. But she would keep building anyway, because that's what you did when you finally understood what mattered. You showed up. You built. You let go when it was time, and you trusted that there would always be another Saturday, another beach, another chance to start again. Evelyn Cross had spent 10 years building an empire. Now she was just Eve, building sandcastles with people she loved, and it turned out that was the most successful thing she'd ever done.